well,
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Stat Check episode 187. This is the great 10th edition roundup that was meant to be featuring Cliff, but Cliff apparently had like family stuff going on. So, yeah, stuff it. We've got me and Nathan. We're here to talk about a ton of stats. You guys want to know how 10th edition was, how it ended, what was the strongest armies over the whole edition? We're here to talk about it, talk about the whys and the what fors and the what we can learn from this as we move into 11th edition. We'll also have a bit of a chat about 11th edition. I've been playing some, Nathan's been ignoring it. We've got a bunch of questions to ask about, all the good stuff.
look, I just want, as everybody always says, the rest of the picture, and I want points and appendices. That's what I want. I want to see what everything's
Just
going
play
to
1,900
cost.
points like an adult, like how we've been doing.
I don't know if that sounds like an adult thing to do or not, but yeah, it probably is the correct thing to do. I don't know. But I don't know. This last weekend, I went to Pokemon Go Fest, Dennis, which was in Chicago
Oh yeah,
for the
how
first
was
time
it?
in 7 years. It was good. They set up a whole thing. We did like the Mewtwo Mega Evolution release. Me and the wife went. It was a good time.
Which one? Which Mewtwo Mega Evolution?
I got X and Y. I got both of them
Very nice.
because they let you catch both of them, which was fun. It is very funny though that the ticket is what gives you access to like all of the digital stuff that's there. So the moment the pass expires at like 1 p.m. because it's like a timed window, all of the Pokestops and all of the Pokemon vanish. So there's just nothing there in the field anymore where you're at, which is quite funny. Otherwise, I spent some time doing some hobby stuff. I spent some time um, playing Rogue Trader and playing 007 Last Light. And then I went to go see The Backrooms with my wife and a friend of ours as well, which was good.
Is the game or the film better? Which one of you enjoyed more?
I actually never. Oh, of Backrooms.
Yeah, Last Light. Last Light or Backrooms game? Is
Uh,
Last Light the game or Backrooms the film better?
I think Last Light the game is better. Last Light's honestly touching like my nostalgia just a bunch by like having really goofy shit and a really cool interactive like action film kind of aesthetic to it. The Backrooms was good, but it kind of flubbed the ending, I think, a little bit, which is
Sure.
fine. But it was very creepy. That movie is very unsettling the whole time. They do really great stuff with the music and like the visuals, and the acting is good. So you're just kind of uncomfortable the whole time, which is the idea, right? It's just supposed to be very unsettling. But Last Light has a bunch of great stuff in it. You can go to the Q labs and you can kind of fuck around and like cause inventions to go off, and it has a bunch of references to old James Bond movies and stuff like that, which I enjoy a lot. And I think the sneaking and stuff from the Hitman games that they added in and the ability to kind of approach things in a bunch of different ways is really cool. So if you enjoy kind of like stealth action games, you will enjoy Last Light quite a bit. And if you like James Bond stuff, you should just get it. It's great. Other than that, just playing Rogue Trader, waiting for this Necron DLC for it to come out this week. Because apparently, we needed an infinite Necron museum to be the last DLC for that game. But it is quite fun.
That does sound kind of fun, yeah.
Basically doing anything except playing 11th edition.
What else to do? You did everything except play 10th edition.
I looked at my Tabletop Battles app and I played almost 100 games of 10th edition. That's a lot of 10th edition that I tracked.
That is almost 2 games every 3 weeks.
Look, that's a lot for me.
I'm fully aware. I'm just laughing. You keep freezing, as the chat points out. Do you want to double check your internet connection? Your audio is not stopping, just your camera.
It's really weird. Let me check all my plugs.
Easy. As for myself, it's been I don't know if anybody's noticed, but it's been quite a hectic week in the Warhammer sphere. A lot of stuff happening all the time. We've had 2 faction packs. We got a bunch of new data sheet updates. We've had dispositions, all that kind of stuff, just slowly being drip fed to us. So it's been a kind of a week of learning the core rules, playing some games. Been playing a lot of Taken Hold because those were the cards that leaked Just trying to get a feel for what 11th edition looks like as we go forward, and hopefully more to continue for the next couple of weeks. I think I am now 7 or 8 games deep into 11th edition that I've played since last Monday, which I consider a reasonable amount. I played 3 games at the I played like four games at the weekend, and then like a game a day since then, pretty reasonably, since we got the core rules spoiled. Having a good time with it. The boards are as light as I was worried they were being. I keep getting shot, and I keep shooting people. That's been broadly my experience, is that you want to be like big vehicle or 5 guys behind wall or in hidden, and those 2 things have felt great, and a lot of other stuff hasn't. But until we have a sort of final nail down on what the missions look like, I've been doing a lot of take and hold, right? So some of the missions might encourage different playstyles, some of the other map sets might be a little different to that, because obviously we don't have all of those yet. So it's been interesting. I've been playing a bunch of Aspect Host because it's what we had the disposition for that one. They were like, this plays uh, Disruption when they did Liam and Seagull stream. So I've played a lot of Aspect because we knew what mission it played, and that meant that it was guaranteed that it was going to be completely, it was going to be at least valuable practice for running the mission and knowing that I was playing the right army. And I've been having a good time with that. Aspect Host has felt good. I like the Eldar things, like I was saying, 5-man guys with hidden seems solid. Just not shot until you charge people from a million miles away as Eldar has been pretty good. Yeah, I've really felt the Fire and Fade nerf. Osterman feels so much clunkier now, and big shame, but probably for the best. That unit Fire and Fading repeatedly into a Falcon maybe wasn't the most fun thing in the world.
It's fun for me, not for my opponent.
Yeah, I've been shot by Defilers way too much already.
Yeah.
But until we know what their points land at, I'm just putting everything that happens with the Defiler into the nothing box. I won't play a game with the Defiler until I find out what points they are, and then I will probably play 2, because then after that I will probably play too many. Plus, I just can't look at them. They're still in the box behind me, and I've not taken them out since the final. I don't want to look at them right now because they'll make me sad. So
they make you sad because
they will make me sad, and I don't want to be made sad.
That's fair.
Outside of that, it's been a busier week on the work front. Like coaching has started picking up again. People have wanted to get back into the swing of things with the new edition, but been also getting a chance to do a bunch of chores, getting all my steps in, all that good stuff. I went through my closet today or my wardrobe today and dug out all the clothes from like the last 4 years of getting fatter and started chucking stuff, which was nice. I found a bunch of shirts I have not worn in like 10 years, which that was nice. I was like, I put them on, I'm like, this almost fits again. So we're getting there.
There you go.
What else is going on? With my mom's birthday on Saturday, we went for lunch. It was nice. I had fish and chips. Can't go wrong with a good fish and chips. Dessert was a little burnt.
Not even once.
I had halloumi fries for starter. Halloumi fries are pretty good.
Sounds delicious, honestly.
I tried ham chips today, like Serrano. It was like, I think it was Serrano ham chips. They were just like, I was in the supermarket, and they were pretty nice. It was just the ham jerky. It was pretty good. This whole like not eating as much stuff is tough when you like snacking. Halloumi fries do indeed fuck. Actually, halloumi fries are pretty great. I went to Wendy's the day after and got halloumi fries again when I got like a burger for dinner because they're pretty good. I do like halloumi fries.
Our Wendy's and your Wendy's sound very different.
Maybe my Wendy's is in Scotland, so I would imagine. Yeah, I got a Baconator and halloumi fries.
I didn't even know that they made halloumi fries at Wendy's. Although this is, I don't go to Wendy's at all, so fair enough.
They were pretty good. Yeah, I'm enjoying the edition. The cover changes are taking some time to get used to. I keep expecting my stuff to be slightly more durable than it is. It feels like the sort of like overall durability. Like people keep saying, oh, well, cover impacts more things. It feels like for a lot of stuff, durability's gone down again, which is worrying in a conceptual kind of standpoint. Like against a lot of AP1 and AP0 weapons, or AP1, AP0, AP2 weapons, they feel a lot more powerful because you're not getting as good a case against it, and a lot of stuff that like all the stuff that people plays already hits on 2s or has rerolls anyway, so you don't really feel the cover change that much unless you're really stacking the cover. So it's definitely come up in a couple places, but a lot of the time it's just been like, well, my opponent's army that ignores cover still ignores cover, and also all my opponent's armies that were hitting on 4s or were relying on Satan and lethal just hand me saves anyway, and then I fail them much more than I used to. So I don't know if durability going down is a good thing. It's certainly a thing that I'm feeling at the moment, and it will remain to be seen if it is a good thing based on how the points land. I'm hoping that everything with the gun has gone up 300%. But it won't.
How much has Hidden played into your games?
Hidden is very, very impactful. Hidden has been very important. It's been the only thing, we said this for a while, that the only things holding the 10th edition together were Lone Op and Rapid Ingress, and I'm feeling an addition of more of the same, except you can add in Hidden into that.
Sure.
Ben J40K asks, what is your go-to summer thirst quenching drink? Sadly, water. I say sadly, I like water, but water. I used to drink a lot of orange Lucozade. I can't do that anymore, unfortunately. So a lot of water.
Sparkling water. Sparkling water has been quite nice. I like my sparkling water.
Angry
right now.
water. No, thank you.
Yeah, angry water is the best water. I like my angry water.
Have I been shot by rerolling ones that hit towering double gun destriers yet? No, but I have shot someone with destriers, and it did feel quite good.
I will admit that the double gun destrier feels like it's about to get a second coming, as if it didn't have a first
not like
one.
getting shot by warp spiders with damage 2 guns?
Yeah, I'm like, there's a bunch of stuff in this game that's like 1 AP that just wasn't as good into a cover meta, and then there's a bunch of stuff that's 1 AP that wasn't as good into armor contempt. And sometimes it's really easy to just obliterate people with AP1 when it doesn't matter if you lose a hit mod. But
I will say I've done a lot of like roll my destrier into target. Ooh, scout squad lived. Fuck.
That does happen. The -1 ballistic skill is still big. Like, it doesn't not matter.
Oh no, I'm just talking like you just hand them like 8 saves because you rolled a little poorly and they spike a couple 5-ups or they AOC'd. It's like, this guy's got hands. And then the Deathwing Knights, they were stood next to heroic into you or some shit, and you're just like, fuck.
It's true. That does kind of happen.
Yeah, it feels like so far the best way to like stop yourself from getting like rickrolled by shooting is to like, I'm gonna cover the objective with a heroic that's slightly durable or makes you come real close to me so I can hit you really hard with my guns, or I'm gonna move block you from touching it. Those have been kind of the 2 ways that it's been popping up so far. But until we have points, I think like everything that I talk about for the edition doesn't matter because context is for cowards, and well, right now I'm feeling real cowardly because I need more context.
I'm excited to start testing in the next week or 2 whenever they release points. That'll be fun.
I'm excited that they gave Orc Boys sluggers and shooters in the edition where you'll never fire either.
I feel like the Orc is just going straight at somebody. Just no stop.
I need to stay hidden, bro. I gotta stay hidden. No gun. No gun.
No gun. I don't do anything. I just wait for you to get close enough to charge you.
And any unit that's got like a random like sergeant has a plasma pistol, it's like you might as well fucking not. You're never firing that shit. You're keeping your hidden.
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Do you want to tell us what the scope of today is, Nathan?
So what we're going to do today is we are going to cover this last week in stats because I know some people are still interested in what's going on in 10th. Then we are going to talk about where we're ending essentially with this meta. We've got a presentation courtesy of Cliff that I'm going to walk through, talking about basically where each faction kind of lands at the end of the edition. So basically what we call meta 1.12, and then we're going to move into all of the stats from the whole edition, and we are going to build an end of 10th edition tier list. What factions were the best in 10th edition? And to do that, we're going to use a combination of rankings for how things did with their overall win rate, their overall event wins.
Which we'll talk about when we get there, because I think we can just save that for the time, right?
But yeah, we'll cover that when we get to it. But first, we're going to do the boring part, which is covering this last week in stats, because I know some people might be interested, but most people are probably not at this point, so we'll just run through it pretty quickly.
Was Pac-Man Zealots number 1 and potentially
They were not. They were not. So this week was a little weird. We are starting to see the events kind of fall off a little bit. There were only 11 events this week. There were only 10 that got into the stats because one of the events was missing basically all of its lists. Which is kind of a habit that I don't really appreciate because then I have to email people if I care enough, or Jeremy has to email people. So just make sure your list.
And we don't care that much.
Correct it later. No, we're at the end of the edition where if I see that you haven't filled in your list, I just delete your event from my list of events that I'm going to cover this week. Number 1 for the week, though, was Gene Stealer Colts, sorted by win rate.
Woo,
7 players, 1.5% of the meta, a 73% win rate. And
so not really, though, because they had 7 players, and we don't track Karma's factions with less than 10 in the stats, Nathan.
But they also had no placements. So it doesn't really
that
matter.
tracks.
Sisters also had 7 players over the weekend and a 66.7% win rate and a single top 10.
For them.
And the first real faction, if we're going by number over 10, there were only 460 players this weekend, so it's not as many players as you would
Only
think.
one of the biggest weekends of 9th edition.
Correct. Blood Angels were the first real faction with 23 players, 5% of the meta, and a 58% win rate. They had an event win, a top 4, and 5 top 10s for a 0.5 over rep. That is so many Blood Angels players coming out of the freaking woodwork at the end of the edition.
Do terribly? Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Next up after that is Black Templars. They had 7 people for a 56.6% win rate, no placements of any kind. And then rounding out the top 5 is Adeptus Mechanicus with 10 people. Somehow more represented than Black Templars and Genestealer Cult at 2.2% of the meta and a 56% win rate and no placements of any kind. Well, 1 top 10. I lied. At the bottom was Thousand Suns with 21 players, 4.6% of the meta, and a 36.9% win rate.
Players. Angling for those
They did still win an event, though. They did still get 5 top 4s, and they did get 9 top 10s for a 2.73 over rep. So I think they're just being dragged down by enough people that's just what happened.
That is chaotic.
Yeah, that is a chaotic situation. Leagues of Votan were right above them with 9 people and 2% of the meta and a 40% win rate, but they also had an event win, 2 top 4s and 4 top 10s for 2.5 over rep. So again, just doing stuff. I don't understand. The rest of the events winners were Tau, who won, or not Tau, Chaos Space Marines, who did win 2 events with a 45.2% win rate. There's just some people pulling down win rates this week, and I don't understand it. Space Wolves, who won an event, Custodes, who won an event, and Death Guard, who won an event, essentially, over the weekend. Like, there's stuff going on. I don't understand how it works, but that is what it is at this point. Yeah.
It certainly is the end of the edition metagame.
Yeah, it certainly is a metagame. Now,
yeah, for what it's worth on this one, KR, the GW Edmonton event, I believe, is at a convention, and they signed a contract with that convention to be there for multiple years in a row. And it just happened that the convention scheduled its event that weekend, and they were like, "We have a contract to be here," and that's why they're there. So that's GW Edmonton, as I understand.
Yeah, that is my understanding of the situation as well. So yeah, there's one last very large event for 10th edition, which is the GW
potentially very large event.
Yeah, we'll see what happens to the player population for that event. A lot of people may not want to play on the weekend.
A lot of people might want their flights to Barcelona paid for in Canada. I would not blame them.
True. Yep. Might as well go try to get a golden ticket, enjoy an event if you already have all that stuff purchased. And a 10th, bring triple filer, perhaps win an event. There you go.
It's good advice. You should do that if you can.
Yep. All right. And then I promised this presentation that summarizes where we're at.
So this is the last, basically, 3 months of data, right?
Yep.
All right. You guys can thank Cliff. Cliff could not be here, but he's here in spirit with a too fancy presentation.
Yeah, Cliff definitely put together the most fancy presentation of all time. So this is 10th edition as of today. There are 20,000 games in this data set, and this is the meta and where we're at kind of as of this moment. Is a meta overview. So this is the full stats board that we're kind of looking at for the moment. So we have Chaos Space Marines at the top with a 59% win rate overall, 2.37 over rep, and 22 event wins over the course of this meta. That's basically the Defiler meta. Behind them is Death Watch by win rate with a 58% win rate and 2 event wins. And then we continue with Defiler factions with Emperor's Children in third by win rate at 55%, 8 event wins, and 4% of the population. But I don't know why I'm doing this way when I can do the much fancier way that Cliff prepped, because I just remembered
it is just prepped. Before we jump across there, can you jump back one slide?
Yeah.
Crazy to look at the event win population here, right? Like,
yes.
Okay, Space Marine, Chaos Space Marines has 22 event wins. The next highest is Space Marines, which are the 25th highest win rate faction with 11, and nobody else hits double digits. Like, the only faction that hits double digits besides Chaos Space Marines is Space Marines, which are the other second, which are usually the second highest population faction, or the highest population faction, which they are in this data set. managed to meet half
Correct.
of Chaos Space Marines wins.
Yep.
Is
The other interesting
wild.
thing, just look at it of this meta, is there's basically just 2 factions above and 2 factions below the win rate window that GW likes of 55 to 45, which kind of
honestly, Death
also
Watch and Agents
goes to
kind of feel like they don't count.
Sure, you can say that. But at the same time, like the number of statistics you can look at here and the different analytics, including 4-0 event starts, event wins, and player population, and overrep, being able to look at those in concert with win rate kind of tells a little bit of a different story about kind of what's going on here at the moment, which is that it's a whole lot of overrep in just a few factions and not a lot of other overrep for people to have, essentially. So not a lot of top 4 placements for anybody who is not a Chaos Space Marine.
Yeah, there's only like 8 factions there that have an overrep above 1.
Yep, which is not great. It's not good. It's not where we should be.
In fact, exactly, excluding agents, 9 factions, I think, out of our 28.
Yep, that's not good. All right. So Cliff prepped a bunch of faction dossiers, which I think are just really fancy and kind of pretty to look at, and they'll kind of go through the stats that were on the other page summarized in totality. So we have Death Watch with their 58% win rate, 2.44 overrep, a 26% 4-0 event start, which is wild to me. 2 event wins and a player population of 2%. We got Thousand Sons at a 54% win rate, a 1.59 overrep, 27% 4-0 event start, 3 event wins, 3% of the player population. We have Emperor's Children at a 55% win rate, 1.06 overrep, a 20% 4-0 event start, 8 event wins, and 4% of the player population. Then we have Chaos Space Marines with that 59% win rate, 2.37 overrep,
So
a 21% 4-0 event start, 22 event wins, while also being 7% of the meta. That means over 14% of top 4s were Chaos Space Marines, by the way, when you look at their population and overrep over the course of this meta. We have Death Guard up next. They had a 51% win rate, a 1.25 overrep, a 17% 4-0 event start, 8 event wins, and a 5% player population.
Notably 4 Defiler factions we've just covered.
Yes. Chaos Demons are up next. 51% win rate, 0.68 overrep, 10% 4-0 event start, 2 event wins, and a player population of 3%.
Right.
And
What
possibly
is this sorted by?
I don't think it's sorted at all. I think it's just in an order.
Because it's not in alphabetical order either. But
nope. Look, Cliff made the presentation, not me.
We're just living in it.
Yep. This art for Chaos Demons, I don't know where it's from, but it's also awesome, just as an aside. Tau Empire up next, 54% win rate, 1.18 overrep, a 17% 4-0 event start, 6 event wins, and a 6% player population. Adeptus Custodes, 50% win rate, 0.66 overrep, 8% 4-0 event start, 3 event wins, and a 4% player population. Leagues of 10 with a 50% win rate, 0.53 overrep, 12% 4-0 event start, 3 event wins, and a 3% player population. Necrons, 52% win rate, 1.41 overrep, proving that you can never count Necrons out. A 12% 4-0 event start, a 7 event wins in this meta, and a 7% player population. Gene Stealer Cult, 52% win rate, 0.39 overrep, 4-0 event start, 14%, 1 event win, and 1% of the player population. Grey Knights, 46% win rate, 0.43 overrep, 15% 4-0 event start, no event wins, and 2% of the player population. Grey Knights kind of desperately need something, and hopefully they get it in 11th edition because it's not whatever they've got right now. Chaos Knights, 48% win rate, 0.52 overrep, 9% 4-0 event start, 1 event win, and 3% player population. Blood Angels, a 47% win rate, 0.75 overrep, 4-0 event start, rate of 14%, 2 event wins, 4% player population. Drukhari, 51% win rate, 1.36 overrep, 15% going 4-0, 5 event wins, and a 3% player population. Imperial Knights, 48% win rate, 0.73 overrep, 10% 4-0 event start, 2 wins, and 4% player population. Black Templars at a 47% win rate, 0.86 overrep, 8% 4-0 start, 0 wins, and 2% of the player population. Mostly balanced analytics without any wins. Astra Militarum, a faction that somehow manages a low win rate with a 49% win rate, 0.85 overrep, 8% 4-0 event start, 7 wins, and 5% player population. Sisters of Battle, 48% win rate, 0.47 over-rep, 7% 4-0 event start, 1 event win, and 2% to the player population. Dark Angels, 47% win rate, 0.38 over-rep, 9% 4-0 event start, 1 event win, and 3% of the player population. Tyranids, 49% win rate, 0.86 over-rep, 11% 4-0 event start, 3 event wins, and a 5% player population. Space Marines, with that 45% win rate, 0.67 over-rep, somehow managing to not be represented enough despite taking home 11 event wins and a 14% 4-0 event start with an 8% player population. Adeptus Mechanicus, 46%, over-rep of 1.1, 11% going 4-0, 2 event wins, and 2% of the player population. World Leaders, 47% win rate, 0.87 over-rep, 7% 4-0 start, 0 event wins, 4% of the player population. Eldari, 45% win rate, 0.47 over-rep, 8% 4-0 event starts, 1 event win, and 3% of the player population. Orcs, 49% win rate, 1.13 over-rep, 11% 4-0 start, 4 event wins, and 4% of the player population. Space Wolves at a 41% win rate, 0.36 over-rep, 9% going 4-0.
Wolves.
Yeah, that's not great. 0 event wins and 3% of the player population. And then, yeah, it's really kind of weird when Imperial agents look like they're doing better than you. 43% win rate, 1 over-rep, 13% going 4-0 to start. 1 event win. 0% of the player population is very funny because it's just fractional, right? Not rounded. And that's it.
I don't know how that was sorted, but thanks, Cliff.
I don't know.
I think it would be kind of
cool
if we could set that to we could maybe use this like auto populate these every week and put the slides data into it, and then like also add like most popular attachments and stuff like that. I think we could maybe do something with that for next edition to up our game.
We now have
we could definitely use that baseline slides and just add in information, right?
Yep. So we're actually going to do that, I think, moving forward. We'll just figure out a way to sort it, whether that's
it should just be alphabetical or 1 to 28, right? I have a question for you before we go into our next big section, which is obviously going to be the full meta recap. Chaos Space Marines during that meta period had 22 event wins. Without looking, because I'm sure you've looked at it, how many factions do you think don't have 22 event wins?
In just this meta?
In 10th edition.
Oh, in 10th edition, I would assume like 4 or 5 of them don't.
I think there's 4 or 5 factions that have less event wins during 10th edition than Chaos Space Marines do during this meta game.
4 factions.
4 factions. Where do you want to put the over/under? And then chat can pick the over or the under.
Oh man, I'm gonna take. All right, I would put
the line at 7.5. I think there's a bunch of
7.5.
I'm gonna put the line at 7.5.
I would take the under on that.
I'm gonna take the under. I'll take the over on 7.5 then. But chat, feel free to chime in, and then we'll see how good the line is. I've not looked at the spreadsheet.
I could open it, but I feel like
Imperial agents are out there. Like there's 2 free ones, right? Imperial agents are not getting there, and frankly, neither are probably Space Wolves. I'm putting my line at 7.5, and I'm taking the over. Nathan's taking the under. All right, guys. All right, Nathan. So for this one, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing the good old usual. We're going to do a tier list. We're going to we're really clever. We're at the end of the edition. Let's do a tier list. Give us your money. It's Pride Month.
It's a rainbow. It's just missing a couple colors.
Exactly. This is the unemployment pride. This is the unemployment pride flag.
Oh my god. God damn it. It's all right.
So what are we judging factions on? We're going to be using all of our normal stats. That's win rate, that's overrepresentation, that's event wins, but we're also going to be adding in a couple of other ones like peak win rate over the edition. I believe it's 4-week win rate we used. Nathan, What are the other ones we're using?
All right, so all the stats that we're going to use so meta-wide, we're going to use event wins, win rate, and over-rep. That's their overall numbers. And then we're going to use peak performance using 4-week rolling averages for these. For meta representation, win rate, over-rep, and event wins. And then there's a cool little aside that I'll talk about statistically at the end when we're done with this. But we're going to use a median rank for all those to give them a grade. And then Innocent, I assume, use vibes to correct things to where their power should be. Does that sound right, Innes?
Pretty much, yeah. We're going to use vibes and stats because it is stat check. Let me
Yep.
just really quickly take a couple super chats. Thank you to Kier Quinn. Okay, these are great graphics. Give the man props. Cliff is wonderful. We do love him, and we wish he could be here. And thank you to Chris Irvine for the £10. Take my money. It's Pride Month. As always, it's June. That means everything that StatCheck makes during this month is going to Pride. We're donating to 3 various causes that we talked about in the last show and that I've forgotten the names of because I'm, ultimately not very good at this.
Mermaids Thrive Youth Center and Rainbow Railroad.
That's definitely the things you said last week. I definitely agree with that. So yeah, if you send in any super chats, if you're part of the patron or members on YouTube, if you like, comment, subscribe, any ad revenue we make, all of that stuff is going straight into those 3 causes. We'll be dividing it up evenly as we have the last few years. But with all of that said and done, let's go pay the bills for someone else. Nathan, take it away. Are we doing this? We're going to do this alphabetically.
Yes, we promised to do it alphabetically. We even checked to make sure the spreadsheet was given the right numbers at the other end of it, which is good. All right. So one of the things I want to talk about real quick is over the course of 10th edition, we have had 1,969 events. Almost
my line was horrible.
Events. What?
My line was horrible. 22 was a bad number to pick. There's a lot more events than I thought there were.
Yeah, there's...
Okay, it is. Look, the answer for everybody was 1.
I'm going to tell you that I think you're going to be fine at the end of this. No, you won't.
Well, the line for Chaos Space Marine, the only army that won less than 22 events across the edition was Imperial Agents with 3.
It was, yes. It's not turning out well. The number of
the
games,
next
by the
was
way,
27.
Correct.
36. Sorry, my line was dire.
Look, I was like, I don't know, maybe 4, but it's fine.
I was pretty confident that there's a lot more events than I thought there were this edition. Yep. Just to quickly sum it up, we have data from 1,959 tournaments in
69 events.
Oh, it says 159 on my sum, but maybe I'm missing an event. Maybe I'm missing
1,969 events and over 300,000 games are where we're
at. A lot of games.
Yep. So this data set is quite large. By alphabetically, we are starting with Sisters, though, who had 83 event wins over the course of the edition, which is good for 8th. A 52.1% win rate over the course of the edition, which is good for 6th, and a 1.35 over-rep over the course of the edition, which is good for 4th. Their peak performance was for meta representation was 5.4%. Their peak win rate was 15.9. Their peak over-rep was 2.25, and their peak event wins in a 4-week period was 10, which is good enough to give them a median rank of 8, which would put them in A tier by the breakdown that I've got here. But where do you think they belong?
I think Sisters have been remarkably solid all edition. I'm happy with lower end of A tier. They've had good builds and they had good index builds. They've had decent variety coming out of the codex, right? I think it's one of the few armies that's had, not at the same time, but had multiple viable play styles, right? You've had the index style, you've had Halburners, you've had Penitent Host for a brief period. You've had Bringers of Flame, obviously very notably and very significantly nerfed. They've been good with indirect. They've been good with durability. I think they've had a lot of different viable ways to play it, and the stats kind of bear that out, right? Sisters are sitting with a very reasonable win rate, 52% across the edition. They won a decent number of events. There's nothing in there that's really oh yeah, nothing in here that would make me say no, this isn't a solid army. You were never free pairing into Sisters this edition outside of a couple specific moments.
Next up alphabetically is Adeptus Custodes. They had 50 event wins. 50.2% overall win rate and a 0.74 over-rep. Their peak numbers were a 9.6% meta representation, which is the 3rd highest meta representation of anybody for peak value. They had a 56.1% peak win rate, a 2.26 peak over-rep, and the most event wins that they were able to get over a 4-week period was 5, which puts them at a median rank of 17, which, if we follow my grading system, is a C tier. I don't think we can really argue that necessarily.
No, the strength of the index and the strength of Talons of I think recency bias a little bit kind of puts Talons of the Emperor recently has been very strong, but there was definitely a long period of doldrums where their codex was kind of terrible. Their index was pretty heavily nerfed and was still fine, but wasn't ever that exciting. And they were definitely really heavily carried by like Warden's datasheet and Clay's datasheet for a while, like obviously very competently, but it was very mono build for a long time until sort of like Lions came around, Solar Spearhead came around. Like they've done some interesting things with Custodes, but it's never really felt like nothing's ever really been quite as strong as the index, right? Like if I think for me an army is broadly, if its design fantasy didn't change a ton, but it's still just not doing the thing that its index did, but doing it worse. Like, Eldar very clearly changed quite significantly from what their index was doing. But so I think it's an easier comparison to not make. But for Custodes, it's like they've been doing Wardens and durable stuff since the index, and it feels worse now than it did then. And I'm not really sure what else. Like, there's nothing in me that makes me want to bump it up, right?
And Kara Quinn has a super chat we can talk about briefly, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Kara Quinn, for the 1999 super chat. I bought my nephew minis back in the late 90s while I was in the army and looked at the GW stuff, bought him a shite ton, and got hooked myself. He's gay, happily married with an awesome daughter. Thanks, nephew. Love ya.
Awesome.
That's very nice. Thank you, Kara Quinn. And thank you for sharing.
Thank you for the $20. All right, who's up next?
Next up is the Adeptus Mechanicus, who had 34 event wins over the course of the edition. They had an overall win rate of 48.9% and an over-rep of 1.11. Their 4-week peak for meta representation was 3.2%, which is good for 26, which is quite low. Their peak win rate, though, was a 61.1%, which was good for 6th overall. Their peak over-rep of 3.04, which is good for 5th. Their peak number of event wins, though, over the course of 4 weeks was only 5, which is good for 21st, which gives them a median rank of 20, which puts them in my ranking system at D tier overall. Personally, I think Adeptus Mechanicus maybe are at the top of D or maybe low end of C.
Yeah, I think the amount of peaks that AdMech hit was maybe good for me bumping them up to C and being like, I'm comfortable with saying that they're C. Like, obviously they won Worlds in the hands of Richard Ziegler. They've had some very, very like high win rates at different points. They've been like outright dominating at others, but also, man, what a dog water codex they had. It was a very, very weak codex. Their index wasn't particularly anything inspiring either, I don't think. They've been like fine at best, excepting like a couple of times of like really, really peak activity where I'm like, I'm happy to give them like low C for like perform, like, if you can hit top 5 win rate, or top 6 win rate over a 4-week period at least once in the edition, I think I would struggle to put you in D tier because like very clearly you've been very powerful at one point, but it is not the most exciting army in the edition, I don't think.
No. It is interesting to see in C tier 2 of the armies that won at Worlds, right?
Yeah, I mean, Worlds is a flash in the pan metagame, right? Like it's a metagame that exists for 1 week and that's it, right?
It is
like
also
the other army
notable.
That these guys is Chaos Space Marines, which I can tell you are not going to be this low. So,
it is notable as well that both of these, that Adeptus Mechanicus were the only army I think this edition to get 2 indexes and somehow managed to barely squeak out getting into C.
Yeah, I mean, their army rule's been rewritten like 6 times, right?
Yeah. Next up is Eldari, who had 169 event wins over the course of the edition as of last weekend, which is first, in case people were wondering. They had an overall win rate of 53.6%, which was good for first, and an overall over-rep across the edition of 1.43, which is good for first. Their peak meta representation was 12.7, which is good for first. Their peak win rate was 67.1%, which was good for second. Their peak over-rep was 3.48, which was good for fourth. And then their peak event wins. Innes, how many event wins do you think a sensible person would have in a 4-week period?
Oh, well, I don't think I could win more than 4 in a 4-week period. So I think 4 would be a reasonable amount.
They had 27 event wins in a 4-week period. This was... which gives them a median rank of number 1, in case people are wondering. They were definitely the best faction across all of 10th edition.
Yeah. I think
firmly in S tier.
Eldar kind of hits that spot of like, their index was insane, and then it got nerfed and it was still insane, and they got nerfed and it was still insane, and they got nerfed and it was fine, right? Like there was still builds at the end of the index. And then the codex came out and it was broken, and it got nerfed and it was broken, and it got nerfed and it was broken, and it got nerfed and it was broken, and now it's been nerfed and it's fine.
Yeah,
right?
arguably they
Like that's
nerfed it enough
been
at this
Eldar,
point
right?
that
Just
the
you can see it in the bones of 11th edition that every single rule change feels like it's like stop it, Eldar, and it still doesn't matter.
stop.
They're still
No
fine.
more going back into transports. No more moving after you land.
Indirect is just so much worse now. That's all because of the Night Spinner. Like,
Yeah, they're basically just never has a faction had two builds that completely polarize the meta quite like at first Wraith Knights and then Wraith Guard and then Yanari did, right? And Aspect
and
Host
then
also
Fuegan,
involved.
like
Yeah,
the
and
degree of
Fuegan.
centralization that happened when the metagame around Fuegan jumping in and out of a transport, like there
Mhm.
is a like I know that it's vogue to laugh at the Chaos Space, the Space Marines and Orcs having stratagems to do Skyborn Sanctuary. Nothing did it like Fuegan did. Nothing did it with a crit
True.
with like crit 5 sustained lethal full rerolls to hit and wound melt the shots that could jump back in a transport and not get overwatched while doing it, while moving 21 and disembarking out of a transport, right? Just no one did it like Eldar did for that quality of
True.
power. And I think it's been, by and large, it's been Eldar's edition, right? Like the army that's been the most consistent. I think one of the things that's hard to say here is it's a little hard to separate like the rest of the edition from the turbo stupid first 6 months. Like that
Yes.
27 event wins during 4 weeks was Index Eldar, right?
Mhm. What
So
did happen is Index Eldar won so many events. At one point, they were winning, I think, like that weekend, there were like over that 4 week period, there were like 48 events or 50 events. So they won over half of the events over that
yeah.
course of that period, which is a ton. That's a lot. That's so many
One
events
thing
to
I
win.
remember us saying, like right after Index, like when the Eldar Codex came out, was like Index Eldar won about 100 events during the Index. Did we
Yep.
think any other armies were going to hit that threshold? And I think at the time I
Mhm.
said no, because I didn't think any would. And we actually did have two other armies hit that threshold, but it's the two that you would think. And I'm not that surprised that these are the two that hit it. Or actually, I guess three, because I don't know, four armies hit that
We have
threshold. So there's
one,
actually a lot of armies
two,
that actually managed to
three,
get up to that
four,
threshold,
five
which
that aren't Eldar. Yeah.
5 that aren't Eldar, yeah. Necrons, Chaos Space Marines, uh, Death Guard, Astra Militarum, and Space Marines hit that threshold as well. So I'm a little bit surprised that as many hit it as they did. But I think that that's just kind of a sign that there's been some other armies that had high periods of power as well. And
Mhm.
if it had been a little more stable, I don't think we maybe would have had more than just Necrons hit it. Um,
Sure.
but yeah, Eldar closing out the edition with the highest everything. I think it's impossible to put them anywhere besides S rank.
Next up is Astra Militarum. So, as I said, they're notably in the like Century Wins Club for this edition. They had 116 event wins, which is the fifth most in this edition. They had an overall win rate of 48.5%, which puts them in 24th, and then a 1.01 edition wide overrep, which puts them at 10th. Their meta representation peaked at 7.8%. They peaked at a 56.5% win rate, a 2.2 overrep, and then they peaked at 9 event wins over the course of a 4 week period, which would put them in B tier in this statistics
I'm
sorting.
gonna
But
be
I
honest.
think,
I refuse to put them below Sisters because they've been a stronger army than Sisters basically the whole edition outside of like 1 month of Bringers of Flame.
I also think like their win rate is artificially lower than the power that that army has been at multiple times this edition, right?
It's really easy to write an absolutely atrocious guard list, and the guard community
Mhm.
continues to provide by doing it as a bit. I think
Yeah. Why?
I
Well,
personally like I would put Sisters down to B if we feel like this is getting overrated before I move Guard down. I think Guard is a stronger army than Sisters and has been the whole edition, with like a couple of exceptions. Like it's worth remembering that Guard almost single-handedly got indirect nerfed. Remembering going back to the index, we had indirect that could respawn that hit on twos. We had Manticores with the index. We've had Bulgrim. We've had Recon Guard. We've had Grizzle. We've had Bridgehead. Every single new release for Guard has been broken. We've had Yarrick for like the 2 days that he existed. Grizzled used to have reroll ones to wound. The only thing that like separates Guard from the other armies is the Guard tends to get nerfed pretty fast when it's good,
yes.
with the possible exception of Manticores. Is that nothing in Guard has really been able to just like kind of sit and be broken for a long time. They have been generally fairly responsive about hitting it. It's worth like for me, the thing that kind of sets Guard apart this edition, the thing that makes me want to bump them up is that so many game-wide rules exist because Guard was ruining it for everyone. 3-inch deep strikes got changed to 6-inch deep strikes because of Aqualons.
Yep.
The respawn stratagem got changed because Grizzle Company kept doing, or because Combined Regiment kept doing it on Kazakh and just bringing them back infinitely. There's just been so much power, and they've never not been really, really solid. And then you add onto that like the war crimes that Nemo's been doing with Recon for just the whole time, right? Like obviously winning an LVO, right?
100%.
All that kind of stuff. Lennon making the final, like Lennon made the finals of WCW with them. Like they're just been incredibly powerful just the whole time, I think.
Yep. I definitely agree with him being slotted into A tier just based off the sheer amount of rules that were changed because that army did things that it wasn't supposed to do, while somehow also having stats mostly that were low in other categories like win rate and even overrep at times. All right, next up is Black Templars. So Black Templars had 42 event wins over the course of the edition, which puts them at 23rd. They had an overall win rate of 50%, which puts them at 13th, and a 0.98 overrep, which is also at 13th. Their peak meta representation was 4.2%. Their peak win rate was 59.4. Their peak overrep was 1.89. Their peak number of event wins across a 4-week period was 6, which, for the purposes of this statistics, puts them in B tier, which is, I think, where they go. Like, triple repulsor executioner, the brief moment of time in which we all thought that like 100 Black Templar bodies were going to exist in our meta,
I mean, it
and we're going
was
to be a
really
thing that we
good.
had to
It
deal
was
with.
just hard to play and got nerfed pretty quickly, right? Like we had Black Templars with Righteous Crusaders, right out of the WTC metagame with when Olivier won War Masters, then WTC with it, and then we took it to Challenge Cup in the hands of Pumbaa, and then it got nerfed pretty soon after when they like they put the points up on Crusaders, and then they've kind of slowly slotted it back. Like Bastion Task Force, Bastion Task Force Black Templars popped up as a response to the Talon metagame. Like 20 Richard Crusaders was very good at handling that and did some really solid things. We obviously saw Black Templar Gladius being quite powerful after the Sword Brethren changes. With the index, we saw it before the Sword Brethren changes, right? Like just sort of standard, like the Jack Harpster style Land Raider Redeemer full of Eradicators or Aggressors plus 3 Impulsors of Sword Brethren. Back when Sword Brethren gave +1 damage. I think Black Templars has had like a decent variety of reasonable builds. Obviously, very, very abusive user of the Iron Sword detachment right in the beginning. One of the reasons that stuff like Crusaders got Legends. Do you remember the like original 75-point Crusader squad that had reroll
Yeah.
advance and charges, a multi-melt, a melty gun, and an Inferno pistol, and a Thunderhammer, and a 75-point infantry squad that you could put in a Rhino? And I played 4 of them in 2 Rhinos, and it was really stupid with Ironstorm rerolls. That then got Legends, and then obviously you had just stapling 2 multi-meltas or a multi-melta to the top of your repulsor, your gladiator, all that kind of stuff. Like Ironstorm went through a lot of changes, and a lot of it was off the back of Black Templars, not off the back of Ultramarines. So Ultramarines is very much like worth remembering that very much the new vogue, right? Like we didn't start the edition. We started the edition playing Deathwatch and Dark Angels. Then we kind of moved into Blood Angels, Black Templars. And Ultramarines kind of only really came around like in the second year of the edition. Really, it was definitely a lot longer before, like after the first round of Gulliman buffs, I would say, where he got the ability to like go through walls and his double oath. He got both of his abilities at the same time, right? Like it felt like it took a while to lead into that. And Black Templars was very much one of the early vogues of the edition. So I think they've been really solid.
Yeah, and when their codex came out, they kind of got like a little bit better as well, just like right off the cuff based off of what they got.
Yeah, I mean, the Black Templars Codex was a disaster. It's a terrible book, right? Like every detachment in it sucked. It's carried by Gladius and now Bastion almost entirely, and it doesn't look like the new update is doing anything for it in 11th edition.
It's
but,
really
like,
just
for
the
this
data
edition,
sheets in it.
yeah, the core data sheet of I get more multi-meltas for my tanks and I can run a 20-man and you can't has been strong enough to put it into a solid position. I think it's been a good army all edition. It has never been anything like it. It's been very binary in that it will play one specific way. It will play lots of tank, or it will play lots of tank, or it will play lots of men, and occasionally it will play lots of sword brethren. And there's not really a lot of in betweens. These sort of like more nuanced versions outside of like that one period where Gladius was really in vogue, like the David Gaylord style list. Yeah, it's been very, very competent the whole time though. Didn't Lennon bring
Next up, we have Blood
first
Angels.
WCW with Ultra Vanguard Spearhead? And yeah, like that was one of the first times that we really saw Ultramarines really taking the precedent. And that was like purely off the back of Uriel Vanguard. And that list was really hard to play, and only really like not a lot of people really got that much success out of it besides Lennon. And I think that that's one of those things, like you don't take a list because Lennon or Liam or me play it, right? Like you take it because other people that aren't them can also make it work. Don't try to, like, it's not worth trying to be try to just copy the best list in the or a competent list played by a player that needs to play it perfectly. It's not worth it a lot of the time.
True. And yeah, I guess we also +1 to wound oath also coming out for Ultramarines. It caused them to spike.
Yeah, Black Templars are the only Marine army that doesn't have oath, and they have a way worse mechanic with the plot with 4 choices to pick +1 to wound, unless you're playing against Eldar, in which case you pick sticky, which is kind of annoying, but powerful.
Such as
powerful nonetheless.
All right. Like I said, Blood Angels are up next. They had 68 event wins over the course of the edition, which is good for 11th. They had a 49% win rate across the course of the edition, which is good for 19th, and a 0.91 over rep, which is also good for 19th. Their peak numbers were a 6.2% meta representation, a 56.3% win rate, and a 1.88 over rep. Then over the course of a 4-week period, the most event wins that they managed was 5, which puts them in C tier, in my understanding. And I feel like part of this is just because like the damage to army then kind of ran right into several -1 damage things almost immediately, basically, right?
Blood Angels is weird because I feel like the whole edition they've been like good enough, but they've never been great. Like in the index, you had sort of like the Serrano style Gladius build, playing like Lamar in 10. Then we moved in, the Liberator style builds with like Lamar in 10, back when the game was just a little bit less powerful. You had, like a -1 damage permanent AOC unit was really, really annoying for a lot of armies to deal with in that early stage. Then we kind of moved into the Olivier style Liberator Assault Group lists once he started popularizing like the 10-man Death Company with Inferno Pistols, jumping out of the transport when they would get sustained hits when they were below starting strength. Then we had the Blade Guard builds with like 18 Blade Guard Double Lancer that Olivier played for us for BFS and also for like Apira and that kind of space. That I ended up taking a bunch, and that those lists all did really well. Then you had like Jack Harpster's Angelic Inheritor style lists with like the Vindicators and Sanguinary Guard. You had Rage Cursed Onslaught. We've had like lots and lots of different ways to play Blood Angels this edition, and they've all been like genuinely pretty good. Even you can go back to some of the disaster stuff like the list that Nas and I took to WCW with Blood Angels Ironstorm, right, when you were playing the Lamar's Frick plus the Sanguinor. Like that build was good. It had Ball Predators. Like that list was solid, right? Didn't have the best performance, but I still think going 9-7 at Worlds isn't a terrible performance for a list that was very experimental in an Eldar metagame. I'm going to back that one up because Nas still feels a lot of shame about that event, and if every time I bring it up, it makes him feel more. So, yeah, like the Sanguinor's been very annoying at different parts of the edition.
Definitely,
I think like it feels weird putting them in C tier, but I suppose C is like they've been average, but it always feels like Blood Angels has been an army you need to consider. That's always been pretty good. That is capable of winning at the highest level, but also can probably lose to most stuff and has struggled with some of the bigger durability checks the edition has had. The last few months of Defilers and Catan has been tough, and that leaves a sour end note because Rage Cursed Onslaught was such a cool ending detachment to go out on that then just got dumped into a metagame of F you and F off.
Yep. Rage Cursed Onslaught kind of getting released directly into the Catan meta was not good for it, even slightly. And it was also like it struggled into other things as well, right? Like it struggled a little bit into some of the Ultramarines builds that were coming out.
You got dumped straight into 4-wound Victrix metagame, and it was like, wow, you fight harder than me and you're more durable than me and you're just as fast as me. What the heck am I meant to do?
Exactly. Like amazing army detachments and like synergies, but like always kind of number 2.
Bloodless Angels. Bloodless Angels. My nearest and dearest.
Innis, that was you getting that was you getting something nerfed by yourself.
The second they printed that +1 to wound oath, I was like, but can you do that with with Liberator or Assault Group? Nothing says you can't. And then in my list for like 2 events in a row had like the FAQ question that I asked the judge at the bottom of the thing, just in case my opponent pulled it up. Like, no, I do get the +1 to wound.
Yeah, I just don't have any specialist units. It's fine. Just don't pay any attention to it. I promise.
Yeah, I don't need Sanguinary Guard. I have Encouragers with +1 to wound.
They're just as good. They're the Sanguinary Guard that I've got at home.
It's crazy that they were. Yep.
Next up is Chaos Demons. Chaos Demons had 65 event wins over the course of the edition, which is good for 13th, 51.8% overall win rate, which is good for 7th, and a 0.98 over rep, which is good for 12th. Their peak numbers were a 6.6% meta representation, a 60.1% win rate, which is the 7th best.
Well, that was definitely Legion of Excess.
It actually is scintillating, as an aside. It's not.
It was scintillating?
Yeah.
Crazy.
They have a 2.52 over rep, which was good for 8th. And then they got 9 event wins over a 4-week period, which are also scintillating, as an aside, which would put them in B tier, but I think they belong in A tier. I think they belong at the bottom of A tier, is my personal opinion.
I think the high heights and the high heights and the like reasonable heights of Scintillating Legion right before it got a little nerfed and the metagame shifted around it means that I'm probably happy being like, yeah, they seem comparable to sisters, right? Demonic Incursion has been an basically ever-present threat. Shadow Legion's had its moments. Legion of Excess was probably the fairest broken army we've had this edition, but it
and it got nerfed into the ground because
got
of
nerfed
it.
really hard,
really,
and it was
really out of
like
existence.
I don't know, man. I lost that in an event finals, and I still came out of it being like, nah, that army's trash. So
You were
I
the
don't know
most
how much I
vocal
meant to defend
person
myself on
about
that one,
Legion.
but
Yeah. You were definitely
yeah,
the
that
most
army's
vocal.
trash, and I lost to it. Doesn't matter. Still trash. I'm just worse.
But yeah, and then like scintillating has been amazing. Like if you look at the detachment stats for scintillating Legion, it's fucking nonsense. Just absolutely crazy bullshit that's going on in there. And like demonic incursion, like you said, has been good all edition. Like the lows of this army have never been especially low. I think.
Yeah,
Is the thing.
demons are like one of those armies that like sneaky never falls out of like it never drops worse than 50%. Just like any week of data. Is like if you hear demons, you're like it's gonna be like 51.3, right? Demons is just at that win rate. Every time that I've done like a meta review or a meta report, it's been like, and demons have a 50% win rate because that's how many invulnerable saves they pass. I will never be less happy than trying to kill a 4-up feel no pain greater demon with an army that isn't designed to do that. Man, that guy was an asshole.
One of the things I will say, like, is that Chaos Demons are one of 6 factions that have netted, or actually 8 factions, I apologize, that have netted more time above the 55 to 45 window than they've been below it. They've net positive, which is not something you can say about the vast majority of the factions that have been in this game. They spent
I don't
more
think TSPs
time
have
either
ever like
in or
truly
above
been
the balance
terrible,
window.
right? I think that's the biggest thing. They've just never truly been bad. They've always been fine. And does that mean that they should maybe be top of B? Maybe if they say tier gets overpopulated, sisters and demons are on my chopping block, right? But
yes, I understand that. I get that. Right. Chaos Knights are up next. Over the course of the edition, Chaos Knights had 50 event wins, which is good for 17th, a 49.6% win rate, which is good for 16th, and a 0.78 over up, which is good for 27th. Their peak numbers were a 6.7% meta representation, a 57.3% win rate, which, by the way, is good for 18th, a 1.75 peak overrep, and then at their heights, they won 10 events over a 4-week period, which puts them in C tier for my purposes of rankings.
I think I'm probably happy with that. I'm gonna put them higher than Blood Angels, but lower than Custodes. I think the early kind of stage of the edition where we had kind of nothing CK shaped, then we had War Dogs for a bit, and then we had War Dogs for a long time. To be fair, like War Dog spam has been pretty popular this edition. It just took a while for it to like get to the point where it was like truly competitive. But even like the first WTC, there were people playing 14 War Dogs. It just wasn't, that great into Eldar. And then obviously we've had a year and change of double Gatling to spoilers, and it's been pretty good. It was probably broken on immediate release. When they were, do you remember you could fit 6 big knights in a list? You could play 3 abominants, 2 get spoilers, and an Atrocross, and that was just the thing we had to play against for 3 months during Challenger card metagame.
Yeah, that list
that
also
was
when
bad.
it was
That was not fun.
When you can multi-aura people repeatedly with their aura as well, with the abominants.
Yeah, with the battle shock,
vomit mortal wounds at people.
Yeah,
that was a crazy time.
That
should never have existed.
There's been some pretty dumb positions in this game. Like I'm more than happy to blame that on other parts of the game, right? Like that was like Chaos Knights have been broken partly from like the towering rule and stuff like that. Their army rule is trash. Their army rule was trash in the index and it's trash now. And man, I would love them to just do anything besides Battle Shock mechanic for Chaos Knights. Maybe it will be more impactful in 11th edition. I'll believe it when I see it. It would have been cool to see more list diversity from them. It really did feel like you just played against 6 brigands, 6 carnivores, and 2 stalkers, or 3 or like 1 stalker and dogs, and some like Nurglings, and then you played against freak out to spoilers and some Chaos Knight and some demons and some small, and that's been it, right? Like besides that one period you played against 6, which wasn't healthier. Chaos Demons have felt very mono build the whole edition. It feels like there's always the one best way to play them and not a ton else, which I think is a shame, and it makes me not like feel any particular impetus to moving them around in this tier.
I get that. Next up is Chaos Space Marines. Chaos Space Marines also are in the Century. They had 128 event wins, which is good for third most over the course of the edition. 50.1% win rate, which is good for 12th, and a 1.14 over, which is good for 7th. Their peak numbers were a 7.8 meta representation, which was this meta, which is good for 9th. Their peak win rate was 59.9%, which is good for 10th, which is also this meta. Their peak overrep was a 2.54, which is good for 7th, also this meta. And their peak event wins total is 13 over the course of 4 weeks, which is also this meta. Which gives them a total median rank of 7, which would put them in A tier, but I could see an argument for them being at the very top of A tier or the bottom of S.
I'm willing to put them top of A tier and be willing to readdress and maybe move them up to S depending on how it feels. Chaos Space Marines, I think the thing that I want to shout out has been just the most diverse army of the edition, it feels like. Maybe someone else can make an argument behind that, but we started off with Slaves to Darkness, Infinity, Terminators, plus shooting gallery, right? Like you played like Obliterators and Forge Fiends and all that kind of stuff. Plus minus maybe you played like Kairos for his old Vect. And you had like the Abaddon rerolls on top of that, and you could loan up that points of your army, and that was crazy in an meta game where Eldar, couldn't always deal with that. They usually could, but they couldn't always. And like, you got trashed by GSE, but you beat everything else. And, like you tried to show up with guns against that, you just kind of lost if you weren't Eldar shaped. Then they kind of launched into the post meta game where the Sako Liam build with the Pallate Chosen became a lot more popularized. Obviously, then one LGT in the hands of Liam. That was the build that was running the double Forge Fiends. Then you had ACDC in the same detachment that was played by players like Mane. Obviously, went to Worlds with that. Then we moved into we got the Index, and then it continued to be ACDC. We got Chaos Cult, which was very powerful. We had Renegade Raiders launch out. They've had which played like the Warp Talons before they got nerfed 2 or 3 times. We've had Creations of Bile. We've had Huron's Marauders. We've had now Pac-Man Zealots again with Defilers. We've had just so many, and even like Nightmare Hunt got in there and was like reasonably viable. They've had tons of releases, consistently new and interesting ways to play the detachments, and it just feels like, I feel like Chaos Space Marines got more this edition than Chaos Space Marines it feels like they got more of this edition than Marines did in terms of like viable play patterns and options. It's been a very, very generous edition for them, and they've had made out like bandits because almost everything's been at least pretty good, right? Like I struggled to, even just like multiple reasonable kill team releases like Nemesis Claw. There's been so many different ways to play Chaos Space Marines. It didn't matter because you could just win the LGT with Veterans of the Long War anyway. But there's been so many different ways to do it, and I think that's been wild. And I think it's a super cool thing for Chaos Space Marines, but also makes them hard to evaluate because there's been, outside of exactly right now, not that many like insane heights where it's like Chaos Space Marines are very clearly the best thing and need to be nerfed. But they've had stuff like, the injection of Noise Marines even coming out of Emperor's Children really, really helped them and push Renegade Raiders builds back into popularity. And yeah, just lots and lots going on. I think they're the Space Marines of Space Marines this edition, right? They're just the Space Marines of 10. They got the most options, the most stuff. Maybe them and Guard. Like, I don't feel like Marines actually got really that much new this edition. Like outside of their Codex release, where it's mostly, it's just new sad Calgar.
One of the interesting things about Chaos Space Marines, I think, this edition is that they've played the best version of every archetype over the course of the edition. They've had one of the best horde builds when they had good horde builds in the form of ACDC. They've had one of the best fast gun builds with this new version with Defilers and stuff like that, and Pac-Man Zealots. They've had some of the best combined arms as well with Renegade Raiders and transports and stuff like that. Like, they've had essentially the best of each archetype. It has existed in Chaos Space Marines over the course of this edition. They just, until now, like you said, all of their peak numbers are from this meta. And when you look at their numbers over the course of the edition, they're not like crazy. They've won a lot of events, but their win rate has been mostly below 45 and not mostly above 45. They've netted -2 on that particular.
Like being 9th on player population kind of they should have a higher win rate, right? Like their overrep across the edition is 1.14 with a 7.8% meta representation, right? So they're kind of rocking out at about 9, just under 9% of our top fours. Now they're converting a little better than that.
Mhm.
Not even really though. Like it's not that crazy to be at 128 with that amount of player population. The fact that
Agreed.
there are armies with lower player population with more wins is more of a testament to like, the other armies that have similar event wins are like Guard that have the same player population, Eldar that had, like it's just not that crazy, right?
Next up, we have Dark Angels. And I'm going to feel really bad for Dark Angels players in a second, but not that bad. They had 48 event wins over the course of the edition, which is good for 19th overall. They had a 46.9% win rate, which is good for 26th, and an over-up of 0.79 of 20, which is also good for 26th. Their peak numbers for meta representation was 5.3%. Their peak win rate was 52%, which is the worst peak win rate of
That is
all factions.
really bad.
Their peak over-up was a 1.68, which is 24th. And then their peak number of event wins, which was 5, which puts them in a tie at 21st with a number of people, which gives them a median rank of 24th, which is the worst, actually. Their medium rank value of 24, which is second worst in the entire game and worse than everybody except Imperial Agents, which is probably an argument for them to be put into F tier or at the bottom of D tier. You can basically choose.
Look, I'm a executive judgment putting them in F because I need to have more than one thing in F tier, and I think it's funny. Dark Angels have been interesting. The initial release of the edition, they had 10-man Deathwing Knight squads with Old Oath, which were very powerful, and that got nerfed pretty quickly. And then after that, like they still had the Deathwing Knight build, right? Like obviously the sort of the Lenin style list that came out with after the Dark Angels, the Dark Angels Codex came out and was a wet fart, right? And no one had really played it between. Like no one really played Dark Angels between the first nerf and the second one. Like there was a little bit of play, but the Dark Angels Codex came out and it's mostly sucked. And then they buffed Deathwing Knights, and then they buffed the Lion. Azrael been good the whole time, and there have been like some intermittent stuff with like Dark Angels Ironstorm playing like the Dark Angels Ironstorm playing like the what was it called? The Dark Shroud with Talon Masters and the Storm Raven back when Talon Masters still existed. And then Talon Masters got removed. Like there's been a lot of volatility for Dark Angels across the edition, but they've had, I think the biggest thing that stood out for them is they've had so many rules changes. ICC got buffed because their sweeps originally sucked. The Lion's been reworked like 4 or 5 times because he was busted, but in an army that you couldn't really play. Then he was terrible. Then he was broken. Then his devastating wounds thing didn't work because it only worked against dev wounds. It didn't work against mortals in general. And man, that stuff just like sheer volatility for Dark Angels across the whole. And they've kind of landed into like capable outsider status is where I feel like they're at now. Like Wrath of the Rock is a very solid detachment. It's a little bit gotcha heavy. Ironstorm for Dark Angels is still competent. Obviously made top 4 at Dallas in the hands of Kit Smith-Hanna, who's a very, very strong Dark Angels player who loves his Storm Raven. Deathwing Knights are still fine. The Lion is very good. Azrael, but it feels like every time I write a Dark Angels right now, Deathwing Knights have been outpaced despite the lethality of the game, and everything else that the army does is like controlled in like this 600-point package of like the Lion, Azrael, and like the first 2 land speed Avengers, and everything else around it just kind of is worse Ultramarines, and you could just do that instead. And we'll see what that looks like as we go into 11th edition. But right now, I'm not overly optimistic about it conceptually. Like there's some cool stuff with like Dark Flight Pursuit and things like that, but we're talking about 10th edition right now. And for 10th edition, for an army that I think is incredibly good and that I've been willing to take to like a super major, like multiple super majors, I'm surprised that I'm willing to put it this low, but it doesn't feel wrong. Like the stats don't back it having been anything this edition, despite having some pretty decent heights. It doesn't feel like they've ever lasted very long.
One of the things that I'm going to say is that the faction has never been above 55% for a 4-week rolling average win rate, not once across the whole edition, which puts it in the same company as only 2 other factions in this game. And in fact, it has been under the 45% win rate 50 times. And there are only 2 factions that have had more time below the 45% win rate. And I do think it kind of deserves its placement. They're definitely the worst of the power armor factions in my mind.
Yeah, it's not unreasonable. It feels wrong because, like I said, I've felt good about Dark Angels a lot of times this edition, but
Hmm.
I don't disagree. I don't like that,
Yeah.
but I don't disagree.
Next up are Death Guard. Death Guard are another of the Century armies. They had 110 event wins over the course of the edition, which is the sixth most event wins. They have a 50.7% win rate across the edition, which is good for ninth, and a 1.01 over up, which is good for 11th. Their peak numbers, 9.5% meta representation, which is fourth highest meta representation. They had a peak win rate of 57.5%, a peak overrep of 2.12, and a peak event wins in a 4-week period of 16, which is the third most of the edition. That gives them a median rank of 9, which puts them in A tier, which I think is fair. I think that's a reasonable
I
spot
think
for
that
Death Guard
seems
to
fair.
go.
Like the Death Guard index was a travesty, and then
Yeah.
it got buffed really hard by giving it the
Mm-hmm.
new plagues, where they got the additional AP, and then it was never really bad after that. Like that ended up
No.
getting nerfed because they dropped Plague Marine points at the same time. Like originally Plague Marines were 100, and then they dropped that, and they gave them the additional plague, and they dropped Plague Marines points to 90, and then that got nerfed. And that got put back up. They got put back up to, or they put them down to 80. They put them back up to 90, and I think that's where they've stayed. Obviously, Mortarion was very, very different in the index compared to where he is
Mm-hmm.
now, but very, very powerful in both iterations. You've had Typhus being solid, and then you launched into like the original play version. Like Mortarion had his ignore modifiers aura and his brutal ones to wound aura, which worked really well with like Plague Marines and with Plague Rush Crawlers and with Predators. And then you launch into the Codex, which then obviously was turbo cracked. We had the Death
Yes.
Shroud, we had the Mortarion's Hammer, Plague Rush Crawlers build, even after Indirect Nerfs, was still very, very capable of putting up good results. I think Death Guard, and then since then, Death Guard's just been an ever-present meta threat until Defilers, where it got pushed back into the limelight. And it's
Yeah.
still not, it's not the best version of Defilers, but it's still good enough. It's still a powerful army that is really good. And I don't think
Yeah.
Death Guard since I think since they got their second plagues, I don't think Death Guard has ever not been meta relevant. And I think
Yeah.
that to me puts them in. This is an army you must always think about, you must always consider, and that you're never going to get a free win against. I think I'm happy with that for A tier. I think both of the armies below it, all the armies below it have had periods where it's been like, okay, this army is kind of irrelevant. I don't really need to worry about that. That is a thing that's been over nerfed. I don't have to really think about it. It doesn't really feel like Death Guard's ever had that.
Next up, we've got Death Watch, who have 26 event wins over the course of the edition, which is the second least event wins of the course of the edition. I'll let you figure out which one has the least. They had an overall 52.3% win rate, which is fifth best, and an overall overrep for the edition of 1.39, which is third best. Their meta representation peaked at 2.8%, which is second worst. They had a peak win rate of 80%, though, which is good for number one. They had a peak overup, and this is where things get a little weird. You have to understand that overup is a ratio when you have really small faction participation, which Deathwatch do have, usually having only like 1 to 5 players over the course of any given week, which puts them in like the less than 1% range most weeks. So their peak overup is a 13.52. This is where overrep gets wonky, is where when you have those low participation numbers and you get a single top 4 and you make up a percentage of it, you get really high overrep. So their peak overrep is a 13.52. Then their peak event wins number over the course of a 4-week period is 3, but that was probably all 3 Deathwatch players that weekend. But it is second worst in our stats for the purposes of
Look,
event wins over a 4-week period, which is fifth.
based on the
They have a
numbers,
median rank of
they should
5.
probably be in A, but I'm going to put them in C because I just don't think Deathwatch have been that important.
I
And I
can
think
see that.
that's a really important that, like, okay, during the index, when they had 10-man Deathwatch squads and Hellfire rounds worked on everything and blah 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 bullshit, right? Like they were pretty stupid for like a month. But they weren't Eldar and they weren't GSD and they weren't even the best Space Marines. That was Dark Angels. And honestly maybe still Ultramarines as well. And then they got nerfed and I don't think anybody like looked at them. Like they were, you'd occasionally see like, oh, somebody's playing Black Spear with like the DevSense squad because it can teleport and it's doing like its own version of Vanguard. Oh, someone's played that. Oh, Mark Cartel won LVO with them. That's cool. No one else is playing them. And then the last,
Mhm.
couple months since Emil popularized the Triple Force build, that I, picked up, has been better. They've had really good win rate for the last, 3 months or so. They have been very, very competent, but it really does feel like they had a strong start and a strong finish, and that's really, really easy to color perceptions when you have a strong start and a strong finish, but you did nothing in the 2.5 years in between those 2 points. I really don't feel like Deathwatch has been more than a bit player this edition, which I think they've been a really competent bit player and they've had a good start and a good finish, but I don't think that puts them in A tier for the edition for me, and it definitely doesn't put them in A tier. Like I could see B, I could see the argument for B, but honestly, I think like middle of like maybe upper C, like here ish, where like yeah, when they've been good, but a lot of the time they've just been irrelevant. And I think that's one thing that our meta stats don't capture here is like, yeah, okay, they had a really high highs and really good averages, but also terrible just like player population, right? No one plays this army.
No. They are the most GSC. I joke about GSC's play rate. They are the actual army that gets played as much as GSC used to get played. And like the same thing we used to talk about when that was the case with GSC was like, cool, this army is really powerful, but like 2 people are playing. And like, what does it mean that 2 people who are willing to take it to a GT and knowingly do so are doing well with it? Like, what does that mean in the end? And that it doesn't really mean as much as I think
nothing
it means. Yeah. Thank you to Matt Finish for the £10 super chat. Big thanks for keeping track of 10th. Been a massively helpful resource. Had a great time at keeping the guard win rate down during 10th too. Yeah, I see. It's all your fault.
A great job, Matt.
You did a great job. All right. Next up is Drukari, the Darkkin. 46 event wins, which is the 20th most. 49.7% win rate, which is good for 15th, and then a 1.06 overrep, which is good for 9th. Their peak numbers were a 3.7% meta representation, a 60% win rate, which is the 8th most. Their peak overrep was a 2.73, which is the 6th best. And then their peak number of event wins over a 4-week period was 6, which is good for 15th, which puts them kind of firmly in B tier based on the numbers.
I think I'm okay with B for Drukari. Like, they've been an army of competence the whole time. Like, obviously, we've seen Reaper's Wager has been very, very solid basically since it came out. But their index was such a disaster, they had to take one of the codex attachments and give it to them early because the original index attachment was so terrible. They were like, I guess here's Sky Splinter. And Sky Splinter was still just like mostly only okay. Like it was fine. Then
their low win rate was abysmal. When you look at their Drukari like low win rate, it was 35% is the lowest win rate that they've had, which is terrible.
Yeah, Drukari were like a joke for a while. And then since then, they've obviously had some great performances. I know Scary took them for a deep run at LVO. I know Liam obviously won Dallas with them recently with Reaper's Wager. Alex Sacco made the LVO LGT finals with I want to say Reaper's Wager as well. Obviously, there's been some great results out of Spectacle of Spite since the codex came out. You know, that Spectacle of Spite's had a really, really, really high win rate, like very recently, right? It's been a very, very strong detachment, but it's never really been like particularly broken. I definitely like when it came out, thought Spectacle Strat was going to get nerfed, the Charge in your movement phase 1, and it has been in 11th edition. But it definitely felt like, oh, I mean, if this is a broken army, it's a very easy lever to pull on and just be like, no, that doesn't get to exist in the same capacity. And it just never needed to be pulled.
Yeah, it just never needed to be.
Well, Scourges are pretty broken. I would love to see Scourges not fire and fade. It's so stupid. But they're just kind of okay.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that, like, there's a bunch of stuff in the meta that when it was really powerful, like Katana and stuff like that again, like, what does a witch detachment do into a Katana? Nothing. They die horrifically.
Yeah. Like, Lady Malice was good additional tech. Scourges have been good. They lost about, like, the Court of the Archon fight first during the index was great. Like, but they've lost a bunch of stuff since then. Scary never quite achieved his goal of getting the Void Raven Bomber up to 7,000 points. Like
that, the preview for that data sheet for 11th edition is very funny, by the way. From the fact that
they pick a thing and they bomb it, but it's at the end of your opponent's fight phase, so it doesn't have to live a turn cycle, which is not a thing that I think I can see it doing.
Yeah, it's also everything within D6 inches of that unit, which is very funny. So you have to roll the D6 to see how big the explosion is. Yeah, roll the 1, not hitting anything except the unit. And then you roll a 1 on the 4-up, and then you don't do any mortal wounds.
Oh, no. You'll hit the 6 on the 4-up to see if you affect. You'll roll a 6 on the range when there's nothing else nearby, then a 6 on the thing, and then a 1 on your mortal wounds. That's the most. That's the way to do it. That's the maximum pain.
It's the maximum lottery.
Drukari lost units this edition as well, which is not great, right? Like, obviously, losing the Court of the Archon, losing Grotesques, not great.
Losing Urian, one of the new characters.
Using Urian as well. Oh.
Peacemasters as well.
even their kill team releases were like their kill team releases were cool. They got mandrakes. They got the Hand of the Archon. Do you remember the Hand of the Archon? I don't.
No. All right.
B.
Next up,
the Best of bees.
B. The Best of bees. Yes, the most average of averages. Next up is Emperor's Children. Their event, they were out for the whole edition, so some of their numbers are a little bit lower than other people, so it's worth like taking that into context. They had 27 event wins in this edition, which is 26th, so second from the bottom, or third from the bottom, I guess technically. 48.6% win rate, which is good for 23rd, and has 0.81 over-rep, which is good for 24th. Their peak values were 4.8% meta representation, a 65% win rate, which is fourth highest, a 2.44 over-rep, which is 10th, and then 6 event wins over a 4-week period, which ties them for 15th with the number of other factions, which puts them on for their medium rank at 22nd, which puts them in D tier, which I don't know if doesn't feel right, but it also feels right for most of the time that Emperor's Children has been out.
It does feel like an army that's just been like on fire or irrelevant until someone plays it and is like, no, actually, this is just the way you still build it. It's still the same thing, right? It's been incredibly mono build. Like it's been 3 princes and some combat units and some noise marines, and they've cut the noise marines for some defilers recently. But it's still just like really good at doing that.
Yeah.
Nothing's really changed. It's been one build the whole time. It's not been very interesting. It's never been an army you can particularly count out. Like any army is capable of losing to it if you don't come prepared for it, which, Prez and company included has done that. It's just been pretty good. I think it struggled a little bit from like tough matchup into Victrix Guard when they came out, tough matchup into Catan, tough matchup into Admech, tough matchup into Eldar. Like it's been, it's felt like it's always been like one of the best armies, but never quite the best army. Like even right when it came out, right, was the Night Meta game, which was just war crime disaster level for it. If you weren't like, I always feel like Emperor's Children has been the army that is the best army that's been held down by the metagame it existed in context of. But unfortunately, when that's been every metagame since it released, that I have to just say that maybe it's just not that good.
The codex also just isn't very deep, like you said. Like there's several good data sheets in it. There's like one good detachment, maybe 2 good detachments in it. And like most of the people play the good detachment, which is coterie. And then they did definitely get like a missing thing that they needed when Emperor's Children Defilers released. But it's not as good as the Chaos Space
Their win rate is definitely
is.
catapulted the last month or so, or last 2 months. And I don't disagree with that. But I don't think the stats don't bear it out. Like outside of the last couple months, it's just kind of been, yeah, man, they would have been really good if they were good, just the whole time.
And like we're really talking about the edition wide perspective for this faction, which is
and also they did nothing for the first 18 months. So
it's true. They did nothing. Where were they? Next up is Gene Stealer Colts. They had 61 event wins, which is good for 15th. They had a 53.5% win rate, which was second best over the course of the edition, and a 1.4 over-up, which is also second best over the course of the edition. Their peak numbers were a 5.7% meta representation, which is a lot of Gene Stealer Colts players. Not get it twisted. Good for 16th. They had a 66.6% win rate, which is the third highest peak. They had a 4.14 over-up, which is the second highest over-up of the edition, and then they had 11 event wins over the course of a 4-week period, which is 7th best. They are definitely one of the S-tier factions based off their median rank.
I don't think I can put them above CSM, though, so I think I have to do that.
Do you think that they've been worse than CSM across the entirety of the edition?
I think so. I don't think I think the things that CSM are doing now are about as strong as GSC was doing in the index. And I think across the rest of the edition, CSM has been better.
So I will say that Gene Stealer Colts have been above 55% the same number of weeks that Eldar have been, and have a peak win rate only a few percentage points lower than Eldar.
Such a low player population, and it's very self-correcting because it's an expensive army that's hard to put on the table, right? I think that just does that a little bit, right? It's worth remembering in here that like GSC at one point had a 37% win rate coming out of their new codex. Like to put a point on it, right? Index released,
yes,
broken beyond belief, got nerfed, was broadly fine but still quite good. Codex came out, was utter trash tier dog shit, got reworked, turned into Outlander Claw, which was pretty good to very good, got nerfed, Then Host of Ascension came up, was good for 6 months, got nerfed. Bio's been okay the whole time, but was fundamentally like one of the reasons that the 4-up res roll got taken away. Like they've been a very negative play experience a lot of times the edition, and they've had a lot of different play patterns. But I don't know if I would say they're stronger than CSM at any, like, outside of a couple specific like instance points like the index. Maybe this is my GSC bias showing, but I play both these armies. I feel like I'm happy saying that most of I would have, if I had had to pick one of them to play for the whole edition, I think I would have done better playing CSM than playing GSC.
Yeah, I guess looking at the stats, they're definitely also like fourth for most time spent above, like from 45% or higher. But it's definitely a situation where their low play rate may be a thing to consider. But they've definitely been very good over the course of the edition. I think
Like,
if they're not
I'm
in S
not
tier, they're definitely the best
unopposed to
in
doing
A
that
tier.
and just being like, I just don't think I could put them below CSM, which maybe means I just need to put CSM in S tier as well.
Yep, I think they can be in A tier. They just have to be at the top of A tier because otherwise,
Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. I think they've definitely been stronger than Guard baseline. Like I think Guard has had some higher heights, and GSC's been nerfed because of Guard like 4 times. Assholes, but
all right.
I'm
Next
not
up,
even
we'll
sure I
talk about.
believe that, honestly. Like I'm definitely happy with that one, but I'm not even sure I believe that they're better than Guard. But
I think
I'll
they're
leave
better
the
than
numbers
Guard.
there. The numbers do say that, and I'm only going to exercise so much control. I put Deathwitch in C tier. Like, come
on. Next up are Grey Knights, who have a very different story to tell. They had 36 event wins over the course of the edition, which is 24th, a 48.9% win rate, which is 21st, and a 0.91 overrep, which is 18th. Their peak numbers were 5.2% meta representation, a 56.4% win rate, which is 21st, a 2.16 overrep, which is good for 16th, and then 6 event wins over a 4-week period, which puts them into a tie for 15th, which gives them a median rank of 20, which is D tier in my listing, which I think is where you've already slotted them.
Look, Grey Knight's index was there. Mr. Deimos was a messed up stratagem. The 20 to 30 Terminators build was competent. I can't really give it much more than that. It was competent. And then Dread Knights were solid. And then the Codex came out, and like Warpbane's been pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's been fine. There's just been like 2 notes to the army the entire edition. It's been, did you want to play the Storm Raven and Dread Knights, or did you want to play Piles of Infantry? And that's kind of been all it's done. I don't ever really think it. And then the Terminator for a little bit in the index. Like the index detachment was better than everything the Codex has access to except Warpbane, and Warpbane was out for before the Codex came out. The Codex came out and it was worse than the index was, accepting exactly Chrome Purifiers. And I think that that's sad and boring and not what we want. It's just an utterly sauceless Codex with the win rate to match.
This is true. All right. Next up is Imperial Agents. There's no way to not do this in a kind of cruel way to the few Imperial Agents players that exist, but they had 3 event wins over the course of the edition, which is the worst. Their overall win rate was 41.5%, which was the worst. Their overall was a 0.8, which is 25th, but hyperinflated by the number of players they had relative to the number of placements they got. They had a 0.8% peak participation. Their peak win rate was a 65%, which is 4th best, but again, kind of tamped down on by the fact that they never really had
being
many
like
people playing.
7 people's data. Yeah.
Yeah. Their peak overrep was 3.74, which is good for 3rd, but again, inflated by the low player population. And then their peak event wins was 1 in a 4-week period, which was good for 28th or worse. They are by median rank 28th, which is the worst faction in the game. They are another F tier army. They belong below Dark Angels.
We say this every time we talk about Imperial Agents on the show. This is not a real army. And we don't say that to be like dismissive of Imperial Agents, but this army is an army that has been abandoned by Games Workshop, not by the community. Like, it is, if you are an Imperial Agents player and you want to be heard on this issue, don't whinge in the comments of people who are being like, hey, Imperial Agents isn't a real army. Whinge to Games Workshop, because we can't do anything about it. All we can do is point out exactly what we see, which is that this army does not receive balance updates unless it is nerfing the allied section because custodians are abusing them again. Wins to GW. We're not going to talk about them in any more context because I can't talk to you about what them, like, I've been able to do that for every other faction. Be like, this is what they were doing in the index, and this is what they were doing since then. I don't really care what Agents have been doing. Congrats to Folger, man. Folger pulled it out by playing trash against people who was worse than him. and
Yeah.
that's been it. Like the whole time.
The biggest thing about Imperial Agents that I can see is that you got a rough deal from Games Workshop where they didn't give you a real army rule, and if you had gotten one, then maybe things would have been better. But you were treated as an allied codex and not treated as a real codex, which is unfortunate and unfair to Imperial Agents players. And I hope that in 11th edition you get treated a bit better. That's what I'll say on it. Next up is Imperial Knights. They had 69 event wins over the course of the edition, which is good for 10th, also nice. They had a 50.8% win rate over the course of the edition, which is good for 8th, and a 0.95 over, which is good for 15th. Their peak meta representation was an 8.7%, which is 7th highest. Their peak win rate was a 59%. Their peak over was a 2.16, and their peak event wins in a 4-week period was 10, which is good for 8th. They had a median rank of 10th, which would put them into B tier, which I think is where they belong.
I feel weird putting Imperial Knights over Chaos Knights. So maybe I need to bump Chaos Knights up.
Like, I think this is the right spot.
Do almost anything in the index?
They were the best win rate army in index at edition release when Towering was broken.
At the time.
Yeah.
I guess they had old Canis Rex when he was still crit 5/6 on 2s, and then the Codex came out and he. Yeah, I guess.
They pre-nerfed Valor Strike before Codex release.
Yeah, we don't really talk about that really. That's basically just a print error. We can kind of treat it as like. I don't know. Imperial Knights feel like they've been good a lot of the time, but they've never really felt great outside of exactly that period where it was them, Death Guard, and Chaos Knights ruling the roost. But maybe I'm just. I don't know. I feel like I'm being dismissive of Imperial Knights because I've just never broadly seen them do anything at the top level. Like they've never really had the Armiger spam builds. Like Spearhead Arms was fine on Codex release, but they were really broken right on release, right? Like really broken. Definitely an army you were capable of losing to, and did. They had, I guess they had the period where Bondsman still affected the big knights as well, right at the beginning. Correct. That was tough. And that lasted a while. They got Towering nerfed, which was pretty rough. Yeah, okay, I'm happy with A tier because I think they're or B tier because I think their index performance was strong enough to just kind of propel them through, and then since then they've been like on and off pretty decent. The 6 of Feel No Pain helps a lot compared to Chaos Knights.
They also definitely are bouncing back like a little bit more recently with their newest detachment releases and stuff like that. So they're definitely seeing like an upswing.
Pretty solid. So yeah, okay, I'm happy with that.
They're definitely not an doldrum in the middle though.
A lot of I don't know. I feel like an army I've just not played against outside of like the first exactly 2 periods. I feel like I just never see them. I know that like Triple Lancer and things like that have been reasonably popular occasionally. So yeah, okay. I'm happier with that. I would feel like I would put them maybe below Black Templars for and Black Templars and Dark Drakari for competitive impact, just because I don't think either of them have. I think both of them have done more. No, maybe that's not true. Maybe there's fine. Okay, next up.
From Towering to very short, we've got Leagues of Votann next. They had 45 wins over the course of the edition, which is 22nd. They had a 50.4% win rate.
2 of them were Tim Schneider.
Yeah. A 50.4% win rate, which is good for 10th, and then a 0.81 over up, which is also good for 22nd. Their peak numbers were a 4.8% meta representation, a 57.2% win rate, which is 19th, a 1.58 over up, which is 26th, quite bad. And then 5 event wins over a 4-week period, which is tied in 21st for the number of other factions, which actually puts them in D tier. And I think that's reasonable. I don't think anybody outside of Germany is good at playing Leagues of Votann.
Yeah, so like the index came out and it sucked. It sucked so bad. And then it got buffed pretty significantly because it went from, so if anyone doesn't remember, in the index they picked a unit at the start of the game to put 2 tokens on, and then you got tokens on, you killed stuff, which meant that your army roll only turned on once you were getting tabled. And then you got bonus VP when you killed the unit that you marked. And then they buffed it after a couple months to be, okay, you pick 4 things. And then it was really good because it got its CP really early. It had a bunch of stratagems. People started playing like the 10 Terminator unit a lot more consistently because you could actually fuel it with CP. You could get your AOCs online. And then Votann was pretty solid. And it was pretty solid for like a year and a bit. And then they did the Codex, and the Codex was fine. Like
Yeah.
Brandfast got nerfed because it was messy and had weird rules interactions. Delve was good, but not exceptional. And then people have latched onto Hearthband recently because the +1 damage strategy and the 16 pound consolidation are much better now than they were in the index. To the degree that Hearthband, which was a joke detachment when it released in Grotmas, is the only 3 DP detachment for Votann going forward, which I think is very funny. It's like, I don't know, they're just never really been a high performer. I can't think of them ever really being like the thing that I was scared of for a super major or anything like that. They've always just been an army that like was there and you paired them sometimes.
They played like definitely the fairest Warhammer of Warhammer. They Warhammed
Oh
the
yeah,
most fairly.
the most Warhammer per Warhammer.
The like least flavorful, like least spicy, least anything, least flavorful of all of the things. They just played the mayonnaise of Warhammer. All right, next up is Necrons. Necrons almost caught Eldar, by the way. They were very close.
They
They had
were so close. They
they needed the
honestly,
average.
technically still good.
They could, if they win 14 events over the course of the next 2 weekends, they
10
could do it.
days.
Yeah. Go out there and do that, Necron players. Beat out
That'd be
Eldar.
really funny.
They had 155 event wins over the course of the edition. Good for second. They had a 52.5% win rate over the course of the edition, which is good for fourth. A 1.22 over up, which is good for sixth. Their peak meta representation was the second highest we saw all edition at 10.1%. They had a 59.4% win rate, which is about 12th. A 1.97 peak over up, nothing to speak of. And then they had 18 event wins over the course of 4 weeks at one point, which is the second most we saw all edition. They
How
belong
do
in
I
S
hate
tier,
you?
and
Let me count the ways.
I have one more thing I want to say, and the reason why this army should just solidly be right behind Eldar and S tier. No other faction has spent more time at 45% or higher for a win rate. They only had 2 weeks, well, 2 4-week periods where they were under the 45% win rate. The rest of their time above the 45% win rate. They had 30 weeks where they were above the 55% win rate, which is like the 4th highest. They did amazingly.
Yeah,
all
almost
edition.
a sixth of the total period. We're above 55% of this edition.
Yep.
Yeah, Necrons debuted with Awakened Dynasty or whatever it was called in the index, and it was good. They had Lichguard bricks with the Feel No Pain. They had Warrior bricks with the Saras. They Saras and Oricon and all that kind of stuff. They had just tons of incredible power, and then they got nerfed a bit, but not really. And then they got one of the earlier codexes, and then they gave Wraith the attachment rule, and they gave the Silent King a bunch of buffs, gave him his ignore modifiers aura. They added in a whole bunch of stuff like Star Shatter. We got Canoptic Core, obviously, right on release of Codex, where you could have the Dev Wound Immortals, which didn't last a long time, but it did last enough to put some of those 155 wins on the table. Then we had Hypercrypt with Monoliths. Obviously, everyone remembers the 3-inch deep striking the 3-inch deep striking monolith in your deployment zone from the LVO finals. Then we had Catan in Hypercrypt as well. Then that got nerfed. Then Star Shatter released, which then played, the 3 DDAs, which never really disappeared. And then we got Necroceramator, we got Catan, we got the Catan rework. There's just never been a time where Necrons weren't just pretty fucking good, right? Like they've just been the entire time. They've been one of the 5 things that you had to just like kind of have a plan for, unless you were a World Eaters player. In which case you just showed up, and that's why Anthony never respects World Eaters and why we did this episode without him.
Definitely doesn't have anything to do with him.
They've been good the whole time. Like every single time a Necron player is like, oh, blah, 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 blah. I was like, no, your army's been the best army the whole edition. Like in terms of consistency, it's I think the number one besides Space Marines. I don't think anyone can match Space Marines for consistency, but
we'll talk about Space Marines later. But yeah,
I'm going to put Space Marines higher than whatever our tier list said. Whatever our
that's fine. You can do that. I think it's wrong statistically, but we can do that when we get to it.
I don't look. This is the stat check tier list, not the stat tier list. You're the stat. I'm the check.
Fair. I think that Necrons have just quietly been the most They're probably, I would say, the best army of 10th edition, if not for the peaks of Eldari. Like, they
Yeah,
would have been the
I think
best
I would agree.
army
I
in the
think
game.
Necrons have consistently been the strongest thing you can do. If you wanted to play one army for this whole edition, if you were going to go back in time, I would have just said, here is Necrons. You should go and play this the whole time. It would either be Necrons or CSM. Maybe Eldar. Maybe Eldar if I was willing to sacrifice your last 6 months.
All right. Next up is Orcs. Orcs. They had 86 event wins over the course of the edition, which is good for 7th. They had a 48.5% win rate, which is only 25th, and then a 0.93 over-up, which is 17th. Their peak meta representation was 9.3%, which is the 6th highest we've seen. They had a peak win rate of 55.6%, which is 24th. Peak over-rep of 2.05, which is 19th. But they did have a peak event wins of 13 in a 4-week period, which is the 4th best, which kind of slots them into C tier. And a lot of that is because like the peaks of Orcs were addressed so quickly, right?
I talked a
Like,
little bit about how like generally responsibly guard nerfs were. Orc nerfs were like lightning. It's
and
been
hard. They got hit.
kind of funny, right? Like, okay, you get Warhorde as your index detachment. It's pretty good, but the meta is pretty hostile to you. And you write it out with like Warhorde being pretty good for a bit. Then the index drops. And it's like, or the codex drops. And it's like, here is 4-up Feel No Pain Mega Knobs. Go forth and destroy motherfuckers. And you do that for like a month, for like maybe a month at most. And then they're like, nah, you can't have that anymore. And you go back to Warhorde and you go back to like a little bit of Green Tide. And Green Tide is pretty good. And Green Tide gets like tapped on the nose a little bit, right? And it's like, no, stop it with the what was it? It had the like the +1 to charge equal to the turn number or something like that stratagem for a bit that got taken away because it was hitting like 7s out of reserve or something. And they were like, you can't do that. I'm like, fair enough. That gets hit. And then you get Tactical Brigade. Tactical Brigade's a really, really cool rule set. But also, no one spoke to the kill team department, who are also printing really good guns right now. And suddenly, your shock attack guns are one tapping Lehman Russes from across the board with no counterplay because they're AP5, ignore cover. So your Rogaldorn your Rogaldorn can AOC for a 6-up when you're not going to do that. So you're just going to die. Well, you can't have that. Orcs can't shoot. We shouldn't let that happen. And then you get Breaker Boys at the same, and you get Breaker Boys, and Breaker Boys are also pretty good. Breaker Boys do some stuff. And then it's like, well, Breaker Boys, put you back into Warhorde. You can play a bit of Warhorde again, and Warhore's still pretty competent. It's trucking along. Like Brian Sight makes LGT finals, and he does pretty well. He loses to Liam on stream, but everybody loses to Liam on stream. Who gives a shit? That's not a relevant data point. And then you're like, okay, cool. More DACA now. Let's just give them some guns again. Wait, didn't we learn this lesson like 6 months ago? What if you just tabled everyone in 17 seconds? And they did that for a bit, and then they were like, well, you can stop doing that, but not quickly enough. Somehow they didn't just do that like within 3 days. They were like, we'll let them have like that 13 event win period. And then that got nerfed, and it was like, okay, it was fine. And then they gave them Gazgul joining 20 Mans of Boys, and you went back to Warhorde again for the 4th time. And then they gave them Commando splitting, and they gave them Wazdaka, and like some people played some Cult of Speed with the Death Copters because Cult of Speed got reworked like 3 times. They changed Big Hunt at one point, and they made kill rigs and hunter rigs into monsters instead of vehicles, and no one noticed. Orcs have had a bunch of changes this edition, and it's felt like every single time it's been, stop playing the broken stuff, go back to Warhorde. And they do that, and you go back to Warhorde, and nobody wins except Brian. And then like 3 people play Call of Speed at the end of the edition, and that's been Orcs, and they've been there the whole time. That's been Orcs. They've been about.
The peaks of Orcs have felt like peaks of Orcs have rivaled any other faction that's had good stuff all edition, but they've spent most of the time being punished by
how dare you have the good stuff we gave you?
Yeah, exactly.
That's been the way I would describe Orcs is, how dare you use the things we gave you to be strong?
Yeah, and never has a faction got nerfed faster and harder than Orcs have repeatedly across the course of the edition, and I feel bad for Orcs players because that has just been the thing you've got to experience.
Yeah, I will say that one thing that always makes me laugh when I think back to it is how everybody on release was like, "Oh, the Orcs Codex is the most thematic book they've ever done. Every detachment's super cool. There's a ton of options." And they nerfed 2 of them, and like the Orc Codex sucks. I'm like, well, it can't have been that thematic then, can it? If the only reason I liked it was because it was broken. That's always made me laugh because it just makes me think whenever someone's like, "Oh yeah, I got a really thematic codex," I'm like, "Oh, your codex is broken as fuck." Then.
Next up, our Space Marines. They are the last of the century club folks that we're going to talk about today. They have 127 wins over the course of the edition, which is the fourth highest. They had a 46.5% win rate over the course of the edition, which is second worst in the data set, and a 0.88 over rep, which is 20th. Their peak meta representation was 9.4%, which actually was only good for fifth, as an aside. They had a peak win rate of 54.3%, which is second worst, 27th. They had a peak meta over rep of 1.58, which is 25th. And then they had a peak number of event wins of 12, which is good for sixth, which gives them a median rank of 20, which would put them in D tier. But Innis is going to put them somewhere fucking wacky.
Well, I put them in S because they're an S tier army.
I fucking hate you so much.
The entire look. Are you going to sit here and tell me that the entire edition has not been defined by Space Marines?
I don't disagree with you.
Right. Like, okay, walk down me through memory lane of Space Marines. Index was pretty good. We had Ironstorm, or not Ironstorm, we had Gladius. Gladius was pretty good. Mostly got played in other attachment because it didn't have the +1 to wound yet. Not the most exciting time. But Ultramarines were there. We saw some stuff. Then we had Ultramarines Vanguard once they gave Ventress the better rules. And you had John Lennon playing that with the teleporting dev sense. Then you had we moved into, like, that was when the Codex came out. We also had Ironstorm, which started popularizing like Space Marine Ironstorm, playing like Gollum and Calgar with Ironstorm pieces, Stormraven, all that kind of stuff. Got nerfed like 4 times. Remember Ironstorm, the broken detachment? Then we had Stormlance playing Stormlance with the Stormraven with Ultramarine stuff. Back when you remember you could reactive move the Land Raider or the Redemptor back into the Stormraven in Stormlance. Yeah, remember that? Remember that? That was totally fine. We had Calgar with Company Heroes. We had the Apothecary Biologist and Gladius that got nerfed. We had Shadowmark Talon. We've had Firestorm Salamanders popping up here and there. We've had, obviously, the entire period of Ultramarines. Remember 25 CP Ultramarines? Remember Ultramarines just rocked up to the table and had 25 CP? And that was just a thing you had to play against with your army that was like, oh, I have to discard this card to have a CP to interrupt next turn. And the Ultramarine player's like, I'm going to grenade you, go to ground, stealth, cover, -1 to wound, AOC, fight on death. And I'm still also going to just like take your kidney because I get your CP as well. And that was just a thing it did for like a year. And it was just there the whole time. And then they gave it +1 to wound on top of that. And then they gave them Vitrix Guard and Titus and Wardens, and just the whole time they've been
good.
Just so good.
I think the biggest thing to understand is like at large, Space Marines have been bad, but Space Marines have gotten extremely powerful things and have played basically Gladius the whole edition, except for the occasional times where they played other stuff.
You occasionally needed to own like 10 Deathwing Knights, and you could play Space Marines the entire edition.
Yep. Like otherwise, so like I understand why they're in S tier, because in the hands of like the correct of good players, that army has had moments being completely unbeatable, right? More than any other army in this game.
Look, if I go by like the metrics of what's making the most top 4s at Super Majors, it's never Space Marines consistently for a metagame, but over the edition, it's Space Marines. It's Space Marines and Necrons. And I think for that reason, like, I have to just, like, they're the army that's on every team at WDC. And the way you design your team in WDC is you design your team around which Space Marines you bring in, right? Like, it's just so significantly impactful to the wider ecosystem. Every single person, you must go into an event. Like, every single one of these other metagame stats, right? Like, the volatility on their play rate is pretty high. It's not for Space Marines. Their play rate is consistently 8 to 10%. And it doesn't really deviate a ton from that. There is always 1 in 12 players in the room is playing Space Marines, and you can probably assume that at least a couple of people who are there with a chance of winning are playing Space Marines, which means that you just have to expect to play against them.
It's true. I mean, our default metric for whether or not a unit has been good for most of the edition has been, can you kill a Marine equivalent body with Armor of Contempt, essentially, has been like the basal metric for offensive power.
They more than doubled Intercessor's damage output in the same patch. They gave them double shots and +1 to wound oath at the same time.
Oh, Jesus Christ. All right.
And it was still just like only okay.
This is true. Next up is Space Wolves. Space Wolves had 46
Dark Angels.
Space Wolves is doing better than Dark Angels, quite a bit better. They're in 46 event wins, which is 20th, 49.8% win rate, which is 14th, and a
They're
0.95
quite a
over,
lot
which is
better.
16th. Their meta representation peak was 3.5%, which is pretty low. Their peak win rate was a 59.8, which is 11th. They had a 2.29 peak over rep, which is 12th. And then they had 5 in a 4-week period, which is good for 21st, which actually slots them into C tier, which is probably where they belong. I mean,
I feel like
I
a
don't think
little high
Space
for
has
my
done anything
taste, but
spectacular all edition.
yeah, like Space Wolves in the Index
There have been some good
didn't
moments.
really do a ton. Like you kind of had Stormlance, or like you didn't have Stormlance yet, right? So Space Wolves in the Index didn't really do anything. Then they got Stormlance when the Space Marine Codex came out, and they were a menace for a while, right? That was like the origin of Wolf Jail,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of did that for a while, and then the Codex came out, and you did like Wolf Jail adjacent things, potentially plus minus some amount of tech marines giving rapid fire to the fucking predators and the lancers and all that kind of stuff. And that was broken for like a month, and then it got nerfed pretty
Mm-hmm.
hard. And then people have kind of fallen into the pattern of like maybe 0 to 1 Thunderbolt squads, 10 to 20 Terminators, new Logan, right? All that kind of stuff. That's been fine. But I never felt like Space Wolves have been like outside of exactly Wolf Jail, which was mostly like back when they could still have characters attached to it and had the Blood Surge and the Blood Surge and the Turbo and Rapid Ingress. That was the last time that I really feel like Thunderbolts have been like a complete method dominance or like a thing that you really need to consider. Since then, they've just been, fine.
Yeah. I mean,
Their
C tier is
codex
where
is
things
bad as
are
well,
fine,
right?
right? Yeah, their
Like their
codex
codex,
detachments are
they're
bad.
they're so limited in what they can do with characters, right? The fact that
Mm-hmm.
like Wolfguard Terminators can only be joined by two things. There's an entire detachment that just didn't work, right? Champions of Fenris, just it had character enhancements and no characters that could join Terminators. So why did
Yep,
you like why does this exist, right? It's a very classic case of left not talking to right in GW's case for this army, I think.
100%. And that's why they're in C tier. Like they've had a
Yeah.
few moments of peak, but have been mostly just kind of like okay.
I think every time that Space Wolves have been good, it's because they just like didn't think about the fact that Thunderwolf Cavalry exists when they wrote rules that worked on mounted, because mounted usually means outriders, and outriders suck.
Yeah, that's true.
One
Just
day I'll
never
paint the
account for the
outriders I got in
Thunderwolf
my
Cav.
Leviathan boxes. I never or my Indominus boxes. They're the only things I never painted.
Maybe they'll be good this time around.
Nah, they won't.
Oh, fair. All right. Next up is Tau. Tau had 79 event wins over the course of the edition, which is good for 9th. 49.4% win rate, which was 18th, and then a 0.97 over rep, which was 14th. Their peak meta representation was 6.4%, which was middle of the pack. Their peak win rate was 57.9%, which was also middle of the pack. Peak over rep, 2.44 for 11th. And then their peak event wins was 8 in a 4-week period, which was good for 13th. Kind of just slip into B tier.
Yeah, I think Tower. Like I may be comfortable with
Like
like
the top
like
of
moving
B.
demons down to below where they are. Like I would be comfortable doing that. Maybe.
I think that's fair. I think that
'Cause I
probably
don't.
is
I think
more
Tau
where
have been
demons
broadly
belong.
about as good as Demons, maybe a little better, but Tau have had a
Mhm.
few more heights. Like obviously, the highlights for Tau during the Index, they had the crazy, maximum cyclic ion blasters units. You could play like 18 cyclic ion blasters on a squad of crisis suits that had some crazy stratagems because you had like fire and fade and all that kind of stuff. And they've had
Mhm.
Kaoyun, which has been very, very powerful, been nerfed multiple times. They've had Monka, which has just continually been repeatedly getting chain buffed. Obviously, Markerites have been reworked and gotten a lot more powerful. They've had Twin Lance, they've had Crew Hunting Pack builds, they've had Ox Cadre has been workable, but mostly it's been the Monka Kaoyun. Which one of these is better? Is this an early game meta game, or is this a Tau can survive till late game kind of game? But it feels like Tau have just always been in the conversation of being pretty good. And Crew Hunting Pack occasionally shows up and just like dominates a tournament or two and then disappears back into the shadows until the
Yep.
one person with a back brace strong enough to play it shows up again. Um,
True.
yeah, I mean, Tau have been good. Like I took them on a whim to play with the new Broken Twin Lance because new Twin Lance was broken beyond, still the most broken data sheet I've played since 9th edition. Because I didn't ever play with a Wraith Knight. But it got nerfed pretty fast, and Tau's been kind of in that position, right? A lot of the time that Tau's been really stupid, it's been nerfed. Every time it's been bad, it's been buffed, and it's been served reasonably well by it got the new Vespid models, which were really cool. It got the uh Twin Lance, and obviously, got the new stealth suits, which were overall probably good for the army in the sense that it took away a really cheap unit and made them be a little more restrictive. But people in the world they didn't love it. The Storm Surge got redone a little bit to be a lot cheaper. There's been good stuff for Tau through the edition. I think they've been pretty confident. They've just been good. They've been fine, and they're always an army that you need to be thinking about, like Fire and Fading, getting hit by Wreck Cadre. Where they split out the crisis suits into 3 different units so they could repoint them. I think they got all the crude shit this edition. Like, yeah, I'm broadly think Tower have been done well. I think they've had a good place. I like complaining about Tower a lot, but mostly I think they've been just doing a good job.
Next up, Thousand Suns. Thousand Suns won 68 events over the course of the edition, which is good for 11th. They had a 53.1% win rate, which is good for third, and a 1.27 over, which is good for fifth. Their peak meta representation was 5.5%, which was around the bottom quarter. Their peak win rate was 60%, which was 8. Their peak overrep was 2.52, which is good for 8th. And then they won 6 events in a 4-week period, which is good for 15th. Kind of slots them into 8 here, which I think is where they belong.
Yeah.
And
T-Sons have been scary all edition, right? I don't think there's ever a game, there's ever been a period where you're just like, oh no, T-Sons don't do anything, right? Like obviously in the index, they came out, they had indirecting Magnus, they had the laser hands Eldritch Vortex with indirect or whatever Arcane Vortex at the time, and then they had like very cheap mutant Vortex Beasts. Then they went through kind of that period of being very, very powerful with those tools. They continually got like things chipped away at that from that. They had, back then they had the cabal points, they had the blanks, they had the free rerolls, the free stratagems, right? All that kind of stuff was very, very powerful. Then the codex came out. We had incredibly broken power coming out of that codex on release, where they had the infinite spellcasting, they had warp meld pact, which was just functionally uninteractable, right? Like it had the take mortal wounds become interactable that ended up getting nerfed, but like wasn't very fun to play against for a brief period. They had the magical chaos knights builds with like triple forge fiends and all that kind of stuff, stacking spells. They had the Zangor enlightened on disc with the bows, which were just incredibly cheap for the damage output with spell stacking, and then that got nerfed pretty hard, and then people developed into being like, oh shit, maybe we should play these Scarabacle Terminators. And then they started putting 10 to 30 Scarabacle Terminators on the board and sort of like the Alex Jetson style build with 10 Scarabacle Terminators in Grand Coven using the crystal to support them out. Obviously, he was the high scorer at WTC in 2025. And then we had like the 30 Scarabacle Terminators list that became popularized by like Wolf von Mibu, Malta from Team Germany, that ended up doing really well at LVO and a bunch of events since then. Just very, very, very powerful army across the board. It turns out that the army that doesn't really fail damage checks has been good in an edition that's been characterized by a lot of damage checks. Just very, very, very powerful the whole time.
Yeah, and then they got Defilers at the end of the edition and are doing a really good job utilizing them with extra AP and a Feel No Pain and good overwatching.
Defilers. What a stupid day sheet.
Never has an army been given free oaths and then not done well with it, right? So, but that army has been
I still think the
all
Stormlord should just get oath the moment as a data sheet roll. I think that would help Tyranids a lot.
He would get it though. He wouldn't give it to the rest of the army. He'd just get
no. He should give it to everything in Synapse range in the army.
Oh, so 6 inches. Yeah, fair.
Stormlord gets 9 because that's his data sheet roll right now.
Okay, fair.
That's why I want to barrel.
I get you. Yeah, Thousand Suns have never been, I think, out of the power conversation. And anytime Thousand Suns are in the top 5, we're all just kind of like, yeah, that makes sense. The army's
every single time Thousand Suns are out of the top 5, someone goes, but what if I just did the same thing and it was good this time? And we're all like, yeah, obviously you just do the same thing and it's good this time. What if you just put Magnus on the board and he shot things with his stupid dumbass wing? That would be good, wouldn't it?
It would be very powerful, exactly. Next up are Tyranids, who are an opposite end of the story. Tyranids had 64 event wins, though, over the course of the edition, which is good for 14th. They had a 48.6% win rate, though, which is 22nd, and then a 0.84 over, which is 21st. Their peak meta representation was 7.4%, which is 10th. Their peak win rate, though, was a 54.5, which is 26th.
Their peak win rate never even got to broken one single time.
No, they have 0 4-week periods above 55%. They're one of the 3 factions that is true for. Their peak overrep was 1.43, which is the worst peak overrep in the entire game. And then their peak event wins was 7, which is good for 14th, though. And they kind of slot into D tier. And I don't think that's untrue.
I don't think it is either. It's a tough edition to be the launch box army. So Tyranids Index was Invasion Fleet, and it was pretty decent. It had like decent legs, like an answer into Gene Circle. That's why Team America took it to WTC in the first year, and Exequeens were pretty cheap. but all the melee stuff sucked, and it continued to suck. And then Tyranids got their codex. They got the first codex of the edition, and it didn't really do a ton to dissuade you from playing Invasion Fleet, besides to play Unending Swarm, which is a miserable fucking army to play, which got nerfed at the same time as Guard got nerfed, with the nerf not letting you bring back like 30 squads of gargoyles, and also the restriction to Blood Surges that came out of ACDC, Curse Cultists with Dark Communes, that also hit infinite chaining of the Blood Surges in Unending Swarm, so that kind of killed that detachment. And then Vanguard Onslaught's been fine on and off. The best 5/20s in a zero army you've ever played. It's really good at going 20-0, 20-0, 20-0, 20-0. I got tabled on turn 2. Dear God, please, what's happening to me? Those have been the only ways I've ever seen that army play. Synaptic Nexus has been off and on. Got hit really hard by the Armor Contempt changes. Took it to a WTC myself. Regretted it the whole time. Subterranean Assault came out and was broadly pretty good. Like, it's fine. It in the hands of like an expert player, it's very capable of doing well, but it's not really above the rate. It's just a good 10th edition detachment. The Red Terror is fine. The new Raveners are pretty good. So are the Hyper Adapteds. The Lash Prime is fine after a rework. Like, they have a lot of things that are pretty good. Obviously, Crusher Stampede had that one brief period where it was very powerful before it just kind of like the metagame eclipsed it for a bit. But it had like this one nice little period where like triple Tyrannifex was just like exactly the right answer for the way the metagame was playing. And you could play triple Tyrannifex and plus a bunch of other stuff and a Biovore. But man, has that Spore Mine scored more points than most other models besides the Convil Lieutenant? Yeah, probably.
There's a reason
the
why I
Convil
have a
Lieutenant's got
tattoo of.
those.
There's a
You
reason
do
why I
have
have
a
a tattoo
tattoo.
of a Spore Mine Innis on my leg. It's because the Spore Mine holds me up as well as the Tyranid faction by itself for 2 editions.
Yeah, the balloon lifts me.
It's true.
99 Luft VP.
Yeah. I will say, like, the story of Tyranids is getting punished for people doing things that they're doing well but better than them in an abusive way. So, like,
yeah,
Guard are bringing
Tyranid
back
book is
squads of
incredibly wide, right? Like, I think that's one thing I'll say for Nids, right? Like, they're an incredibly wide book. They have a ton of different options, just none of them are very good, right? Like, they do a lot of things okay. But the problem is when you do a lot of things okay and someone else does it better, your shit gets nerfed when their shit does, right? The Trigon 3-inch rapid ingressing was completely fine because it wasn't that good in combat, but it couldn't have it because Aqualons kept doing it and stopping melee armies from existing. So it's like, well, sorry, Trigon, you don't even get to rapid at 6 anymore. Rapid at 9 like a dumbass, and now you just don't get to drop in. It's challenging. Nurglings were ruining the game for everyone, so Spore Mines couldn't score your secondaries anymore, right? Like, that wasn't Spore Mines. Spore Mines didn't get that nerfed. That was the Nurglings, and you all know it was the Nurglings.
Well, like, Guard respawning things is the reason why Unending Swarm got nerfed. Like, there's just a chain of things where it's like,
Space Marines are the reason AOC got nerfed for Norns in that detachment, and And then Tyranid's got like a couple reworks, right? The Neuroturret got reworked to be allowed to join Zoanthropes, which was a big help. Synapse got reworked to give +1 strength when Synapse range for melee weapons.
which did help.
There's been a whole bunch of like little reworks. Oh, even just like the Hive Tyrant getting nerfed because of Guilliman, right? Like, the one thing that was holding Tyranids together was like the free strats because you needed it. Like, you had the echoing 5-up Feel No Pain, and that got removed, and then the other half of it got removed. And it's tough, right? It's been tough to be Nids this edition. I've played them for a few events, but for them being my favorite army, I've played them vanishingly less, and I wish I had this edition.
And then we are capping off our tier list with World Eaters. World Eaters had 58 event wins over the course of the edition, which is 16th best. They had a 49.5% win rate, which is 17th best, and a 0.81 overrep, which is 23rd. They had a meta representation peak of 6.8%, which is good for 11th, a 55.4% win rate peak, which is 25th, a 1.51 overrep peak, which is 27th, and then a peak event wins in 4 weeks of 6, which is good for 15th, which puts them at a C tier because they just average out slightly better than Tyranids in a bunch of ways.
Yep, I'm basically just gonna move Death Lodge up 1 and then slot World Eaters on at the end. I think that feels good to me. World Eaters, what have they done this edition? So in the index, they had the one cool build that Anthony found, where they did the 5 damage Master of Executions, and that was it. And that build was pretty good. And then the index came out, and they did the same build, but maybe without Angron now. And then they had the 50 Berserkers build, and maybe 80 Berserkers. And then they kept doing that the whole time in Berserker Warband. and then like 4 people played Gore Track.
Yep. If you
And then
started
Defilers came
playing
out
with
and it changed nothing
yeah,
because Games Workshop are scared of 6-inch paneling consolidation, I think.
I think the funniest thing about World Leaders is that if you played from the start to the end, you could have played one detachment the whole time. You
You could
just
have played
played
the same
Berserker
2,000
Warband.
points the whole time and probably not
Yeah.
fucking notice that the army is changing around you.
Yeah. And like they're just boring. And that's why they go in C tier more than anything else. They just don't have a lot
They're
going
not
on for them. They did
boring. They're
okay.
just a black hole of diversity, right? Like it's been
Yeah.
like outside of like the very brief periods that people played like 120 Jackals, and that some people have been playing Gore Track towards the end of the edition because well, Berserker Warband doesn't work. We might as well try fucking anything else.
Yeah,
Like
they're very monotonous is more than anything else. Like they don't have a lot going on for themselves. They're very homogenous in build. 90 some odd percent of people just play Berserker Warband and are just playing like one version of it, and that's kind of it.
yep, look, man, I managed one event with that army and was like, it's not for me.
Yeah.
It's a cool army. It does its thing. It is so stale immediately afterwards.
Mhm.
Man, even that one time they had like Forge Fiends that were pretty good. They got hit. That was tough.
They
So
did get nerfed immediately because they're like, you can't have that. That's too good. Get out of here.
yeah, and man, do I not want to be a world eater shooting player going into the -1 blessed skill edition. um,
100%.
so yeah, I think I'm happy with that. Is there anything in here that you particularly think needs to be smiggled around? Like I
I
could see doing like that, maybe like that or
yeah.
something like that, but I don't care enough to change it.
I honestly think you could move Grey Knights down to F tier, but I think that's just because they haven't really done anything all edition, but they're fine where they're
I
at.
like the like rough bell
And
curve
I
shape that we
think
got
that this
going
is
there.
fine though. And just we'll go through the tier list real quick for folks. So
Yeah,
in S tier, you have Eldari, Necrons, Space Marines, and Chaos Space Marines. In A tier, you have Gene Stealer, Colt, Thousand Suns. I can't tell
Astra,
what that I can't. Astra
Astra Militarum,
Militarum. Thank you. You're gonna have to do a couple of these because I need to make my
Death
screen
Guard,
bigger.
and
Death
Adeptus
Guard
Sororitas.
and Adeptus Sororitas. In B tier, we have Tau, Chaos Demons, Imperial Knights, Black Templars, Drukari, and Death Watch. Thank you. In C tier, we have Adeptus Custodes, Orcs, Chaos Knights, Blood Angels, Space Wolves, Adeptus Mechanicus, and World Leaders. In D tier, we have Tyranids, Emperor's Children, Leagues of Votan, Grey Knights, and then in F tier, we have Dark Angels and Imperial Agents. And those two are interchangeable, I'm going to be honest with you. And that's it.
It's been an odd edition. I think one of the things that kind of stands out here is that I feel like for a lot of those factors I talked about, one build and the one time they were really broken. And for all those armies, and here's the 17 times this army was good. And
Mhm.
I don't love that. I don't love that. I think it would be if Games Workshop is going to play with the power level of armies, do it more dynamically, right? Be willing to push the boundaries on armies that have been very mono build, right? I think there was a lot of things you could have done with some of these armies that have been very stagnant the whole time, right? Emperor's Children, Votan, Grey Knights, Dark Angels, Tyranids. Like, there's so much scope for there to be like, oh, well, here's just another thing. We didn't need another 10 points off the Screamer Killer the 4th time they buffed Tyranids. And I think that a lot of these armies you could be a lot more aggressive with buffing the terrible stuff. Like if it's truly awful, like who the fuck was going to notice another 10 points off a Screamer Killer if it was already unplayable? Like 10 points isn't going to make it suddenly the best data sheet in the game unless it's Custodians Land Raiders, apparently.
Yep. There's like, man, I want to show people kind of like two different metas and like to talk about it because the story I think of 10th edition has been haves and have-nots and like really very powerful OP things, and then they get smacked back down out of being OP over and over and
It
over
feels
again.
like
All
almost
edition.
like so of the armies up here, it feels like there's like slow to nerf or have had like 4 things, right? Like these armies have all had like 3 or 4 things that have been broken and they've been slapped, but it's still been pretty good. These have had like 2 or 3, and they've either or like 1 or 2, or they've either not been slapped or not been slapped very hard, or they've been slapped so hard, but they've had like a lot of things that have been slapped pretty hard, right? Like that's your orcs and your orcs and your Black Templars and your Death Watch and your Blood Angels, right? Blood Angels have had a lot of good builds that have all been hit down. And then once you get down to this side, it's like they had one build and it got hit and it just never got replaced by anything.
Yep. And that's kind of the story of it. And here, do you mind if I'm gonna share kind of the metadata dashboard thing real quick. This is kind of what we have looked at for the course of this edition, and then Like, and this is kind of the story that you end up hearing from that, right? Because like over here at the start of the edition, you have a bunch of stuff, and they've definitely narrowed it quite a bit, but you see things pop both above and below, essentially, the win rate window that we usually talk about.
Mm-hmm.
You can see Death Watch here, you can see Emperor Children here, you can see Death, you can see.
I mean, we can't see
Gene
almost
Stealer Cult.
anything, but
Oh, that's true. I mean, and if I try to zoom in, it's going to freak the fuck out.
it's gonna
But like,
freak out. Yep.
yeah. So you see kind of that same story. You see things go above the line and you see them get whacked. You see them go above the line, you see them get whacked. And that happens several times for some of these factions. Like if we just pick out Eldar, see if
GSC,
we'll actually
Eldar.
do it. Like you can see Eldar, like they definitely have moments where they're going above this line right here repeatedly over the course of the edition.
Yeah, they just
You
had
can
so
look
much
at-
room to fall to begin with, right?
Yeah. Gene Stealer Colt's the same way. They stay up and then they bounce up and then they bounce up and then they bounce up. And that's kind of how it is. And that's what the top end of the meta kind of looks like for the top end factions is they have more peaks than they have valleys or more time that they spend
Never have
outside of
valleys.
kind of this middle
some of them.
balance range, essentially. Yeah.
Or they're Space Marines who live in a valley and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, Space Marines just, let's see if I can pick them. Here we go. Space Marines just live in the abyss most of the edition.
If Space
or
Marines get
enter the
above
balance
40%,
window.
you should be worried. That's where I
Yeah. That's what you can say for Space Marines, yeah. And
like, man, if the
that's
average
just-
Space Marine player isn't going 2 and 3, something's terribly wrong.
And honestly, I'll stop sharing there. I think that's just the story of the edition, is that Games Workshop has been relatively responsive with Nerfs all edition, which is why things haven't ever gotten kind of super duper out of hand.
There's been like 3 patches, I think, where I would say like they really dropped the ball, right? Like the patch where they just didn't make any changes, and the last 2, I think. Like there was one
Mhm.
patch in the middle where they just like didn't change anything for the it was the Eldar patch where they just didn't nerf them. And they were just like, nah, we're just gonna give it 3 more months. It was like right after the Eldar. It was like a couple months after the Eldar Codex came out. It'd been really good for a while. They just didn't change anything. Like that one was a disaster, and the last 2 have been pretty bad as well. But
yeah, and like hopefully they take the lessons from this edition into 11th edition, and like they are responsive, but also like a little bit more, like they cover more ground and they cover it well. Like they cover more of the things that they need to cover essentially, because they have way more levers now for balance than they've ever had. Looking in
my
11th edition.
first goal, I am Iron Storm to 3. I'm gonna
or you're gonna get the land speeder detachment up to 2 or something.
Iron Storm to 3. It's where I'm gonna set my goal at.
I'm
All right.
excited to see if you can do that.
I'm gonna lightning round the plugs, and then we're gonna do questions, and we're gonna lightning round the questions as well.
Oh boy! All right, I'm gonna pull up the questions then. I wasn't sure if we were gonna do them or not.
Yeah, we will. Well, what have I got to
Okay.
do? I don't have a call till 4 p.m. It's all right.
It's fair.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for being with us so far. As a reminder, we are doing our Pride Month celebration. So any money that you guys send through to StatCheck Away this month, we'll be donating to our causes. Nathan mentioned them earlier. I'm again gonna just nothing boxed. But if you send us a YouTube membership, if you join on Patreon, or if you leave a YouTube super chat, we will be putting all that money to those wonderful causes for the month of June. Obviously, we have a lot of content planned. The second that the actual code points are here, I'm going to try and start getting some videos out and all that kind of stuff. I'm in the WTC zone of silence a little bit, but not enough that I won't be able to talk about some general game concepts and stuff like that. So, anything that's pretty normal, you guys should expect that we can do content on, and we will continue to have more coming out from it that way. If you'd like to work with any of our coaches, you can check out stat-check.com/coaching. If you'd like to work with any of our sponsors, you can check out all the links in the description box below. That's Saltar Games, J15 Games, Whale and Jutani, and the Red Dragon. Red Dragon's discount code available through patreon.com/statcheck. Check that out if you want to help us with our Pride Month celebration and also get access to an awesome community to chat about 10th edition and 11th edition. If you want to hear other episodes of the show, you can hear us at youtube.com/statcheck, as well as back episodes. We're live every Tuesday at 6 p.m. UK time. Nope, 6 p.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. UK time. There we go. Correct myself. That means it doesn't count. And you can also find all the other shows on our network, like End of the Matrix, Take All Comers, XM1, Champions of 40K, Medicaid's Orders. And that's probably all of them. And us,
I think that's all
too.
of them.
I already
And
said us.
Yeah, we're here.
We're
All
here.
right.
We're live most of the time. What else is there? That's probably pretty much everything. I did coaching already. It's a new edition. Coaching is going to be busy. Drop us a line. We'll be more than happy to work with you. I need to pay for WTC somehow.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it's probably enough.
All right, let's start. The charities, by the way, are Thrive Youth Center, Rainbow Railroad, and Mermaids UK, as an aside for folks who want to look it up. They're also linked, I think, in either the description or in the Patreon or both.
They're definitely in the Patreon. They're not in the description because I ran out of characters after putting the description in. I only get 1,000 on StreamYard, so
fair enough. All right. Canadian Violence has the first question, which is no thoughts or logic, just pure hot takes. Which faction is going to be the 9th edition Harlequins of 11th?
Tyranids.
Genestealer Cult. All right.
God, I hope so.
Smart Alec has the next question. So far, what's your favorite disposition?
Taken Hold.
I was also going to say Taken Hold, but I think
fucking love Taken and Holding. I just take the thing and hold it.
I love just basic 40k, which is what Taken Hold makes me feel a lot of the time.
I take it, I hold it. If I'm better, I win. I like that.
There you go. Will has a question, which is priority assets of the disposition they'll slap on really good attachment to nerf them a little bit, like they did for Gladius.
Maybe prior assets feels like a lot like it's just like prior assets disruption and Taken Hold all just feel like they play normal ass Warhammer to me. I feel like I can't tell the difference between the three of them, and I don't care if they're playing them. Recon and Purge are the only ones that really feel different in my experience. Like, oh no, I have to do one action a turn to play priority assets or disruption. Like, you were gonna do an action a turn anyway because you were playing fucking 10th edition secondaries. Just take the unit you were gonna do an action with and do your mission action instead. It's just not that big a deal.
This is why you have scouts in your list anyways, right? This is why they exist.
Exactly.
Have them do actions.
You didn't drop your combi lieutenant, did you?
No, that combi lieutenant is still going to be great for doing actions. Next up is Sean. With the apparent knowledge that all detachments not immediately replaced by a one-pointer with the same name will live to fight another day, how long until we see the 9th edition style table of rules that are or aren't legal?
God, I hope soon. The Marines do not need 40 detachments.
Honestly, I think we are going to be at the opening of the edition in the spot where we have the most rules bloat, and I hope it only goes down from there because it is a lot. There are so many detachments.
I hope every codex is just like anything that isn't in this codex is now illegal. Just
I hope so too, honestly.
Everything.
I really do. Chokta has the next question, which is for @Innis. Will all of the Xenos detachment points of dispositions out as of this morning? What are your broad strokes thoughts on GSC heading into 11th?
I think GSC seems super cool. I like Xenocult conceptually. The idea of getting access to my reroll to hits back does gives me the jitters. I'm ready to hit the button. I think Bio makes out really poorly from the character change that they made to call Ambush, which I think is just some poor wording. But if that holds, Bio really suffers from that, as does Xenocult, because Xenocreed, because Xenocreed really wants to play attached characters. I was kind of excited about that conceptually with the 3-up Feel No Pain. It made you really like being sticky and holding an objective and being annoying. But I think that's less impactful now. Killers seems like a ton of fun. Host of Ascension is probably broadly where it was at the end of the edition. The fact you can do Nexus Benefactus double attach now is kind of exciting for that detachment because it's a better user of crit 5s than the Primus is now, I think. You could maybe get away from just like not playing the Primus now if you really wanted to. Final Day seems exciting. Final Day plus either like more up down stuff or killers, or like with any of the 3 points seems pretty solid. Outlander seems good. Like I think there's just a lot of things that you can conceptually do as GSC. It feels like it plays pretty well into like disruption assets or recon. And honestly, like Final Day being Purge the Foe isn't that crazy. I don't think it's the way I would prefer to play it. I would prefer to attach it to a different detachment, but it's not like it's non-functional. So I think GSC's got a lot of interesting places to go. I don't know if it will stack up super well in an early the thing with early meta games is they usually tend to be like, hey, here's our skew bullshit and here's the things that they miss, and that will be what's best to begin with. And the nuance will develop in like a patch and a half's time, and just give it a chance, because if GSC doesn't stack up well against the skew stuff, it's not representative of how it will be for the edition. It just might be that the early edition is chaotic for armies that are more fair, and GSC doesn't really do anything that like punches up super big into the big stuff. And I think that is potentially scary in the current environment to just not do anything into the Catan defilers of the world.
Nick K asks for Tyranid thoughts. I think the Norn detachment looks neat. I think it looks kind of cool. I don't know if it's good yet, but it
The
does
North
look cool.
attachment seems really solid. I like Crusher conceptually. I like Synaptic Nexus conceptually with it. The Ambush Predators attachment seems like a really good way to add scoring to a slightly more non-nuanced list. Lictors have free shot rapid ingress, giving them deep strike is pretty good. Lictors do suffer from losing fight first, but I don't think that's that big a deal. They never did anything anyway when they got charged. The Warrior attachment seems pretty good, being able to have 5 invulnerable save Warrior Primes. The scamminess of like, oh, you shot my unit with a bunch of las cannons and all the Hormigons died and they rolled a bunch of 1s and all the 5s and 6s go onto my 5 invulnerable save seems kind of interesting. Then you trigger a blood surge, right? Like there's some space for some stuff like that. I think it bears testing. I would not be surprised if like the best way to do it is to just be like, and I'm playing triple Terran effects and nothing is interesting. But yeah, Zoanthropes losing big guns never tire is tough. Not being able to shoot when they get attacked in combat does hurt a detachment like Subterranean Assault quite a lot. Subterranean Assault needing to hit 7-inch charges also just doesn't sit with the way that I want to play it. But I could see Sub Assault just going down the like I'm going to play way more shooting route, which could be
true. Chukta has another question, which is alternatively a non-11th edition question. What is the hobby project you're most proud of? And are you working on anything right now that might dethrone your current magnum opus?
I think my favorite model that I've ever painted is my Be'lakor, and nothing has come close to him yet.
Mine is my Avatar of Cain, and I think the Chaos Space Marine stuff that I'm working on right now is coming real close. I think some of the big models are going to look better than it does, but I'm very proud of that Avatar.
Goonhammer uses my Be'lakor as the example model for Be'lakor when he pops up in articles occasionally. So, I don't think I'm topping that anytime soon for the level of painting that I usually aspire to. I was happy with how my Defilers looked at Birmingham. I think I had the nicest Defilers in the top 16, which is a pretty decent bar to clear when you're, doing them as a rush job. So,
yeah. Next up is Dan Ban, which is, what are your top picks for content creators to help prep for 11th edition? Stat check is an auto-include, but curious where you'd prioritize if you only could pick one or two other sources. I was going to say Goonhammer, or the website formerly known as Goonhammer, that is now Tabletop Battles.
The Goons formerly known as Goonhammer.
The Goons, yeah.
Goonhammer articles are usually where I get most of my information because they've done the pre-processing for me and I can focus on the actual information part of it. Art of War, if you listen to the people who think about the game the same way you do, Art of War does this wonderful thing where it has so many people on it, but not everybody on them is going to be the same kind of player you are. If you play the game like one or two of their, content creators, listen to those guys and kind of try to tune out the other ones because their opinions will usually be very dissonant from each other. And if you listen to the ones that play the game like you'll usually get the same thing. I recommend doing that with anybody that's a content creator. Like find a content creator, like the same way you'd find a movie reviewer, right? Find a movie reviewer with the same tastes you have. And then that when you listen to them talk about a movie, it will tell you whether you will like it or not. So find a content creator that plays the game the way you like to play the game and listen to them talk about the game, because you will get the most generalized information that's specific to you for that. So if you have an army specialist, if you're, someone like Disgusting Resilient for Death Guard, or PNW 40K for Necrons, right? Like there's loads of people out there that have like a specific one. I don't have a recommendation for every faction because I don't follow every faction. Nexus Floof, obviously, for GSC, to a good friend. So, find a faction specialist that's a top level player that's worth listening to for the factions that you care about, and then stick to the general stuff like Fireside. Although Fireside's a lot more faction specific stuff now, that David's gone a lot more specific on it, and Vic's taken a step back. Art of War, obviously great for a lot of that kind of stuff. Tabletop Battles, ourselves.
Art of War Down Under is really good by Adam Camilleri.
Art of War Down Under as well, yeah, I would include that. 6++ does a bunch of really good content. They make a bunch of good videos in that space, and they have a lot of high level players. That's most of who I listen to. Jushi, if you're a guard player, go listen to Jushi. Jushi's wonderful. I wish every faction had a Jushi. Vezla also does some good content if you want something that's slightly more unspecific. Sam, you said you were only going to make videos about things that you were specific with. I have no idea if you're ever going to make another video again. You didn't say you were going to make another one. But yeah, Sam, obviously, Sam 40K has fantastic content, and you should check him out as well.
Yeah.
Sam, you're basically part of StatCheck anyway. Like, what are you even pretending? Like, you're on our website.
All right.
Yeah, that's what I got.
Steven has the next question, which is, this is going to be one of those rules where people go, everyone except Necrons can do this, and reference this rule, huh? And it's basically saying that they don't get to reanimate from a reanimated character.
Look, the reanimate rule definitely needs to say excluding characters, so that you can't res the character, because right now it doesn't say that, and I don't like that very much.
You could honestly do that at the basic rule level and just stop it from happening in other things.
Probably
Like
should say
that's what
you
you
can
should
never
do.
reanimate a character unless the rule specifically says you can reanimate a character in the heal rules. Yes. The heal rules right now are a little wonky, and I need to see the rules commentary before I have proper thoughts on them. But I do think it is a good thing that, that Necron Warriors can't reanimate 37 times a game. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. And that would be okay.
Uh, Wix
Thank you
KE
for
has a
the
question.
$2 Canadian. Wix KE, do you think Yarrick was over nerfed? No, if anything, I think he was under nerfed and he should have gone up another 100 points. No, Yarrick is completely fine at his current points level. He is a competent unit that that fights well, contributes a decent shooting attack, and has a powerful rule that is contextual. The previous version of his rule was game-breakingly broken and created deterministic game states where your opponent functionally could not win because you could tag a unit. The specific context here was that you could tag a unit with Yarrick's unit that if it moved less than 8 inches, you could follow you. It would move away from you. You would follow it 6 inches and then auto charge it at the end of the chart at the end, and it would never be able to escape from you. You could deterministically walk up the table with a unit that, if your opponent didn't play melee, could not functionally clear and was itself good in melee and could potentially have like graves in it and everything. That unit was completely bonkers. Was not good for the game. Should never have existed in any capacity. Should never have gone to print. And the fact that he only got nerfed down by like mostly losing that role, but still being functionally the same otherwise, is fine. Like, he's still one of the best ways to give orders to stuff that is not infantry, and he's totally fine at 150 points. Guard players are just completely spoiled.
Next person is Dick Vanderhurst, who has a question of: do we think the bit about GSC units not being able to get resurrected when they have a character with them will stay? I don't know, man. Maybe.
I hope not, because it's a stupid change and it makes Biosantic worse, and Biosantic already sucks.
Yeah, there you go. Get Paid has the next question, which is: I'm currently working on growing my chaos collection. I painted each of my current chaos factions in their 30k paint schemes. T-Sons is red and gold, W in white and blue, and EC in purple and gold. What Legion's 30k scheme should I use for my generic Chaos Space Marines? Sons of Horus, Iron Warriors, or another one? I don't feel like typing. I think Iron Warriors. I think Iron Warriors is the correct one because they do all of the undivided stuff, basically. Or you do Sons of Horus and you make that kind of like your Black Legion kind of situation.
I did my
like
original when I did my first Chaos Space Marines. I did them as World Eater or as Word Bearers because you could do all the like little script and stuff like that. But I was not a good enough bearer to pull it off. And when I redid them, I did them in the same scheme as my Space Marines, so I could share rhinos. But you should do World Eaters so I could live vicariously through you. Or Word Bearers, sorry.
Word Bearers is a good choice. Zach has the next question: is now that they feel like giving us dispositions along with detachment points, what is the funniest combination of detachment to disposition? I haven't actually looked at these that closely.
I am not gonna lie, Warhost being Purge the Foe did kind of make me laugh.
I also laughed at that one because they made Aspect Host a disruption.
Aspect is disruption, and it really does feel like those were switched, right? Like,
yeah, those feel backwards to me.
Were there any others that stood out? It was like really weird to me. It feels like
more Daka being
scrolling through my spreadsheet and seeing if there was anything that really made me feel weird about it.
Man, orcs have so much Purge of the Foe, which is so on brand.
Yeah, that was quite funny. Wrath of the Rock not being taken hold was kind of weird. I really felt like that would be a taken hold. Deathwatch being priority assets felt a little strange. That felt like it should have been Purge of the Foe. Same thing with Host of Ascension. Like, Host of Ascension being taken hold feels strange to me.
Star Shatter being priority assets does kind of make sense, but it's also as funny that it's not like Purge, because Star Shatter
feels like it would be a really good Purge because it's +1 to hit units on objectives. I just don't feel like, compared with Lord Solar, that he's worth taking that point cost. I just don't think you're right, and I think Lord Solar is probably undercosted as well.
Fair. All right.
Yeah, there wasn't a ton that was like too crazy. There were like a couple here and there where it was like, that's a bit odd. Mordaka being disruption was weird, but
I thought Mordaka. Oh, maybe it was Mordaka has Purge. I thought.
Is it Purge? Maybe I just put
pretty sure it's
my
Purge.
spreadsheet.
Orcs have so much Purge. It's very funny.
Orcs do have a lot of Purge. I like that they changed what's it called? Dread Mob to be 1s, 2s, and 3s do the mortal wound.
Yeah, they were.
You can speed run your Stompa.
Yeah. Which was always true of Dread Mob, right? I think.
Yeah,
Wix,
but it's now even faster.
Yeah.
All
right. Next
up. Tactical Brigade is Disruption. I just put the wrong one down.
Which I think makes sense for tactical.
I agree. I just can't read. And Roll and Death is prior. My entire work spreadsheet is just wrong.
Kara Quinn is up next with a question, which is how important is this disposition part for missions? As far as matchups, since you don't know who you face in a tournament, I'm having a problem wrapping my head around if you should care or just build what suits your playstyle.
Until we know more about how the missions function, my broad read is that, like, for most armies, it won't matter if you're playing priority assets, taken hold, or disruption, and you will want to be conscious about playing Purge of the Foe and Recon, because Purge of the Foe pushes you in a very specific direction and has a scary mirror match, and Recon is just a weird mission set by and large. The other three feel like it's just kind of fine. So if you're like splitting hairs between which one to play the one that vibes a little bit with you, and like the other thing that will be a component of this that we don't just know yet is what will the rest of the metagame look like, because your ability to be responsive to the wider metagame will be impacted by your detachments, right? Like if Purge of the Foe is super popular and you can play a list that has a good Purge of the Foe matchup, be a good disposition, you can try to like skew yourself that way, right? To try to, next level the metagame. And I think that is valuable and has a place, but is hard to action until we actually know what the metagame looks like and what the rest of the detachments look like. I know Gladius is priority assets, so you should probably try to have a good priority assets matchup because it's going to be everywhere.
Seth the Mad Doc wants to know what orc combo he should run at an 11th RTT this weekend.
You should play Cult of Speed with 6 squads of Warbikers and 18 Death Copters.
I like that idea. That's a good one.
And if you can't do that, you're a fake orc fan.
If you can't do that, you play Warhorde like a coward. All right.
Well, I would be playing Cult of Speed, so. Yeah. And obviously Wazdaka has to be in that list. Non-negotiable.
Seth did paint Wazdaka, and it looks quite nice, so we should do that.
The Seth Daka.
Henry the Wizard has the next question, which is, any plans for more Beyond the Basics videos?
Plans, yes. Actionable. Any action being taken towards it? Not currently. There is plenty of scope there, but I kind of need a hook for like someone to be like, hey, could you do a video on this? And then it becomes very much like, hey, the stat specific Beyond the Basic becomes a thing I can focus in on, but I'm very bad at reaching into the ether and grabbing a specific idea.
Next
up is Jason K. I'm terrible at ideas. I'm not an ideas guy, unfortunately.
It's true. Innes is not. Next up is Jason, who has, what is the winningest data sheet of 10th, and why is it the lieutenant with a combi weapon? It is the lieutenant with a combi weapon.
Oh, it's definitely the Altark Wayleaper and the Wraith Knight.
Of the whole edition?
I think it's probably still, like, in terms of, are we doing this in win rate or raw wins?
I think winningest data sheet could be also what data sheet has been present the most in the most winning lists?
Warp Spiders.
Okay, fair. I'm gonna agree that it's the combi lieutenant, because that lieutenant has been in everything for all time.
I think it might be Warp Spiders.
It might be. I'm just gonna choose to ignore the fact that you're probably right and substitute your reality with my own.
That's fair. It could also be cultists.
True. Cultists. It is cultists. There you go. Permanently one unit of cultists in every list of Chaos Space Marines that's ever been created.
And all of the index armies for Thousand Suns and Death Guard as well, which counts towards that count.
Yeah. All right. Turk Smash has the last question of the evening, and I'm locking this thread because I don't want to talk about any more of this. Which is thoughts on the Flawless Blade detachment plus Carnival if it's 2DP. So much. Fights first.
I don't have any thoughts on Flawless Blades.
I don't either. I'm sorry, folks. I think Flawless Blades hopefully get more stuff.
I think they're be cool. They're improperly named.
Yeah, they're the very flawed blades is what they are. All right. That is the last of our questions. So I appreciate all of you for sticking with us for 2.5 hours. I'm going to do the call to the high five call outs real quick.
Wee.
If you join our Patreon, Yeah, I know. If you join our Patreon at the most expensive tier, which is $15 a month, you can add a customized thank you message that we will read off at the end of every episode that we do. You also get a private Discord channel where you can talk shit. Sometimes people use
No
it,
one
which is very
does, but
funny
you
to me.
could.
But you could. I keep promoting it as a thing that you could do just in case somebody eventually does it. All right. So thank you to Christopher. When are we getting the stat check tier list of all tier lists, and why will Anthony be solo hosting at Irvine? We just did the full edition tier list, and Anthony couldn't even bother to tell us why he's not here today. So
Yeah, and they didn't even tell us why he's not here today. He just didn't respond to the
he just didn't show up. Probably because he knew what we were doing, and he just decided to duck out like Homer Simpson into the bushes. Thank you to Willow Weeks. Thank you to Dan F. Thank you to Luke Harridan's taking the Subway McCarthy. Thank you to David Clark. Thank you to Just I here, who taught me how to say his name by pointing at his eye and his ear, and I have to stop myself from doing it every time I say his name. Thank you to James H. Thank you to Colton, Dan F. Miller. Thank you to Fungus. Thank you to John V8 Gang. Are Grey Knights Space Marines? We just don't know. Neither does Games Workshop. Thank you to Cam F. Dan. True. Thank you to Cam F. Dan, Morton, Hog Emoji, Hog Emoji. Thank you to Archon, waiting to find out how his Space Elves will break the new edition Rahal. Aren't we all? Although Armored is looking really good as a 1DP detachment.
Well, depends. Does anything have frame?
True. That's a good question. There's a lot of things that maybe should have frame that don't have frame. That's a question for a different day. Thank you to Josiah Gettle. Thank you to Frankie. Thank you to Isaac. Tonight on Stat Joke, this joke is on break. God damn it, Isaac. Get in here and fix your call-out thing. Thank you to Holding Out Hope for Land Speeder Saviors. It's not happening.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited for Triple Land Speeder. You cannot begin to imagine. Fuck.
I hate it so much. Thank you, Steven. What's the best way to exploit DDAs not getting a frame keyword, Ross? If you do that at an event and you don't get yellow carded for not talking about a TO about it first, I will be surprised. Thank you to Tom. My only VGC win was against Isaac, and that's enough H. Thank you to thanks, folks. Thank you to our sponsors this week, Raid Shadow Legends. God damn it, Floof. Thank you to Come With Me on a Gucci Adventure trademark. Thank you to John Garza. Thank you to Henry. Penguins are bad at jumping the wizard. That feels kind of weak as penguin facts, bud. I'm just gonna put that out there.
Which penguins specifically are bad at jumping?
This might be the last episode of Stat Check, because that penguin fact pretty weak. Thank you to Penny the Penguin. Will be very sad if Stat Check ends. Please do not make Penny the Penguin sad. This is your penguin fact. I suppose we will hold off another week. Thank you to
You're
Matthew.
on thin ice, just like those penguins that can't jump. Maybe that's why they can't jump, because they're on thin ice.
True. They would break it every time, and they just can't do that. Thank you to Matthew, writing up the end of the edition on Craft World Oof Way L.
Oof.
Thank you to Vivian. Happy Pride. I came out as trans to my friend. Good on you. Congratulations, Vivian.
Congrats.
Thank you to Buff Rock. Nerf paper, scissors are fine. That's always true every edition. Thank you to Alex. Biblically accurate. Let's go emoji H. And then thank you to Luke. Got that one last GT a week before 11th drops. Gallo. Thank you, everyone.
So sorry, Luke.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for participating in what has been a 2.5 hour plus episode of Stat Check. I appreciate all of you. Thank you very much for sticking with us. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. We'll catch you next time. Buttons. There are buttons here.